Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 1 of What If Naruto Was Got a Political Marriage with Temari. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. In the heart of the desert of the country of wind, fortified by high walls of rock, was the hidden village of Suna, home of the Sand Ninjas. Things hadn't been going well for their village. They were still rebuilding their forces after the failed invasion plan with the Sound Village. But it wasn't totally their fault, as their cage had been in reality Orochimaru. The body of their real cage had finally been found, and the funeral had been held for him and their fallen ninjas. The village mourned the losses that had been suffered and also shamed at how they had been manipulated. In the center of the village, in the largest of structures, the council elders were in a meeting discussing the future of the village. In a large room with statues of all the past leaders against one wall, there was a long table with all the leaders of the village. They were discussing candidates for who the future cage would be, how to deal with such a loss of manpower as well. They were in for some rough times, as they had to keep up appearances that they weren't as weakened as they were. Another village might take advantage of that weakness, and like all villages, they needed the income from the people who hired them. Those who paid well went to the villages with the most strength, and a weak village didn't get as much business. But there was another matter on the table, and that was how to firmly cement their alliance back with Konoha. They had been allies and had betrayed them. That was something that wouldn't be forgotten easily, and they needed to make up for it and prove their commitment to the new alliance. They already agreed that the Sound Village would be a mutual enemy, but they felt something else was needed. "We need to prove to them that we are committed to the alliance," an elderly man in robes spoke. The Leave village did suffer losses, but even at 2-to-1 odds they still came out on top. Despite their own losses, they are still stronger than our village, and if they don't trust us and feel we are only buying time to rebuild, they might think we're planning to attack them again, another member said somberly. "After our attack on them, I wouldn't be surprised if certain members are planning to attack us to wipe out a possible enemy or for revenge. I still find it hard to believe that they were able to repulse the attacks by 2 villages," one member said. "Give it a rest," said an annoyed elder. "We were led to believe they were weak, and we were proven wrong. So now we have to think of a way to make a solid alliance with them. Yes, although they are now currently in the same state as we are in, looking for a new leader," a man said, looking at reports on the matter. Apparently they went Jiraiya to look for his old teammate, Tsunade. "She would be a perfect choice, although I thought she left the village not wanting to return. If she does return, then Konoha will have a powerful leader. She's related to the first 2 Hokages and is a legend herself. With her as a leader, their village will soon start to rebuild itself, and we still haven't agreed on a new cage. When did he depart to look for Tsunade?" one asked his fellow council member with the reports. "It says that he was spotted outside the village. That's odd. Apparently he's taken in a young genin with him. The reports weren't clear, but from what our sources have stated, it appears that he's taken on a new apprentice." The man looked through his reports for a name for the boy. "Apparently it's someone named Naruto." "Wait, did you say Naruto?" another member said, as he suddenly went looking through several sheets of paper he had in front of him. "Is it a Naruto Uzumaki?" The man blinked and looked at the report he had. "Yes, that's his name. He was the one that defeated Gaara," he told them all, and they all looked shocked at the revelation. "Are you sure?" someone asked. "The report was by Temari herself, as she was a witness," the man said, looking at the report in question. "From her accounts, when the Uchiha couldn't damage Gaara, the Uzumaki boy used what was referred to only as a unique move to cause a lot of damage to him with an exploding kunai. Then somehow made, by her accounts, created more clones than she could count, but she estimated something close to 1,000 shadow clones." 1,000? No one can make that many. A few other mummers agreed to that. "While that is highly unlikely," the man said who had been reading the report, "but the boy did somehow manage to beat Gaara, and it is listed on his official report that he does know the shadow clone technique. When first I heard, I had a few people look into him. He's largely unknown, an orphan boy of unknown parentage. He was regarded highly by the 3rd Hokage for unknown reasons. He was said to be dead last of his class, and yet he knows an advanced Jonin move and was on a mission that went to a class, which was also the mission that killed the demon of the mist himself." That started many mummers among the council now. although what they didn't know the circumstances of that mission, but what they did know was starting to painting a picture about Naruto. Do you think that the Leaf Village is hiding his true power? I mean, he has no real past and yet he's shown great promise, regarded by the late Hokage, defeated Gaara, who I thought was impossible. And now it seems that Jiraiya himself has taken him under his wing too. A man spoke up. This boy seems ordinary and yet there are all these things that make no sense, he added as the others started to think about this. The boy is obviously a hidden ace for their village, one member said after thinking about all of this. There is no way someone with this kind of school record that you mentioned could have done the things it says here. He comes out of the academy with an A-class jutsu, can use it to make an unheard of number of clones, took out one of the 7 swordsmen of the mist and defeated Gaara. His school record was obviously faked to throw everyone off. I agree, the boy must be a genius. A natural talented ninja, and with Jiraiya there's no telling how strong this boy will become. Hell, his team sensei is Kakashi Hatake too, it says here, one member said pointing to S piece of his copy of the reports. If this boy is any indication, he could be the next Yellow Flash. Aren't you being a little overdramatic? Of course not, he shouted back at him. Think about all this and the fact that Jiraiya trained the Yellow Flash himself and Jiraiya was taught by their 3rd Hokage too. There's no telling what the boy will learn, and if he's already this strong, imagine what he'll be like as an adult. There was a silence there in the room at this. The thought of another ninja as powerful as the Yellow Flash in Konoha was a frightening thought. Even as allies, the Yellow Flash was a named, respected and feared by many ninjas who remembered that man. The fact that they could be seeing a return of a ninja of that skill would be dangerous. If Konoha ever decided that they weren't faithful to their alliance, a war could be very devastating to them. Everyone remembered how brutally the Rock Ninjas had been beaten in the last ninja war. It might not be so far-fetched. The one that had read Temari's report on Gaara's defeat spoke up. It said that the boy already could summon the toads. In fact, she described the one of the ones she called the size of a small mountain. It was all red, had on a vest with scars on the body and carried a sword. There is only one toad I can think of that describes that. He didn't have to say it, as everyone knew the chief of the toads just by his description. There weren't many toad summons that could even come close, and it seemed even more likely that Jiraiya was now training a new proto-copyright Ga copyright, a new ninja that could rival his last apprentice. If the boy had already signed the contract, the boy was obviously already on his way there. This could be bad for us, one of the older members spoke up, feeling his age at the moment. If they have a secret weapon in the makings, one I might add that trumped our own weapon, we must prove the depths of our alliance with them now more than ever. How? We've already agreed to some restitutions to help them rebuild the damage to the village, a man to his left said. He nodded his head to that point. Yes, but I do have an idea. It might kill 2 birds with 1 stone and even be beneficial to us if things can go perfectly down the years. What are you talking about? He continued on. Simply, we put in for the bonding alliance contract with them. Everyone remembered that old ritual. Mainly when 2 villages or countries had been at war and one side lost, there was a way to cement the peace. It mainly said that the loser would offer up a prodigious member of that group to marry into the victor's forces. It was a way to show commitment on both parts. That might work, a member said, thinking about it. It hadn't been done in a while, but there is precedent for it. If we make an offer to the Konoha Council, they might accept, but we need to ensure that they would. But who would we pick? It would have to be someone close to the boy's age, but also someone upstanding, or else the offer could not even be looked at. Names were thrown out as to whom could it be, but when someone actually suggested Temari herself, that caused a bit of talk. I don't think we should give her up, someone said. She's one of our most potential ninja. She's the eldest child of our late Kage himself. Plus, if the boy is as powerful as we think he could be, then any children they would have would be just as strong, if not stronger. Yes, it would, but that would entice their council to accept. That's why it's a good idea. No, it isn't. We wanted to ensure a peace, not give another village a family of powerful ninja. Hear me out. First, it would give them incentive to accept the offer, and yes, it would create that. But they would have family in Suna, making it harder for them to fight against our village. And if they are that powerful, they would most likely become even a Hokage at one point. If they had strong ties to our village, we could rest easy. That made the council think on matters. It would be true if it happened. Having a strong family of ninjas that has strong ties to their village would be something that could benefit them down the road. It was also offered that maybe one of their children could be married off to someone in their own village. That way whatever strong bloodline that would be produced could also be started in Suna as well. That was what sealed the deal for the council. Everything, if it worked out, would benefit their village. They would have a strong alliance with one of the strongest villages, and possible strong allies in the future, and even future stronger ninjas for them down the road too. Preparations were made to send an official deal to Konoha as soon as possible. Konoha Council. A few days later the Konoha Council was in session. Since there was still no Hokage, they needed to help run the village as best they could. They did have limited power, though they couldn't institute policy or wage war or anything like that. They couldn't accept missions that were S rank and only certain B rank missions. But they did have to help with the rebuilding of the village and with relief efforts as well. At the moment 3 of the most influential members of the council were meeting with each other. 2 were an elderly male and woman, both had been teammates to the late 3rd Hokage, the other however had been a thorn in the 3rd's side for years. He was a tall man in robes and bandages covering his face and walked with a cane. He was Danzo, the war hawk of the village, as it was said. He was a more militaristic influence, and even though he had no official office in the council anymore, many still listened to his counsel. Homura Mitokado, the old woman, was currently sipping her tea as she watched Kaharu Udatane read the letter that was to be sent to the council that afternoon from Suna. The old man's face was an emotionless mask as he read it carefully, trying to read it to see if there was any hidden meaning in it. She had done it herself, and she felt that even though the Suna council was being upfront, they were still hoping for something to come of this. Danzo had already read it and was looking out a window, lost in his own thoughts. Homura finally let out a sigh and put it down. "Your thoughts?" she asked him. "It seems they want to establish stronger ties with us. After all, they did violate the last treaty we had." "Yes, although they were manipulated into it by that traitor Orochimaru," she pointed out. "Agreed, although many still hold resentment over them with all the losses. Also, not one of them ever seemed to have spoken out against the plot as well, which does not do them any favors." He paused for a moment, thinking about what to say next. Although this would help heal that rift, and the person they offered for this deal is most surprising. "I still can't believe they are offering up Temari," she agreed. "From all reports she's one of their strongest genin. I didn't expect them to offer someone like her." "It must mean they are trying to show how serious they are taking this," he said to her, and then frowned. "However, I don't like that fact that they requested that only the ninja of their choosing would be given to her and none other. Now normally I expected something like this, but who they chose. She didn't like it any better, I know. Someone like a Hyuga or the last Uchiha I can understand, or even someone from one of the other clans. But to choose that boy is insane. I can't see why they would want him." Danzo turned around to face them. "I say we agree to it." They were both shocked by this, but he raised his good hand, silence anything outburst against it. "Hear me out. If we accept it, we gain a very powerful genin that could one day help us out much as her training continues. Also, what if this is a trap? If there are members that are trying to send us a spy, then would we want to argue who they want? If they did ask for someone like the Uchiha, then I would be suspicious a bit more on their actions. Therefore I think they are honest about wanting to strengthen the new alliance with this show of loyalty. We should accept also, because otherwise it would insult them and might sow some distrust with our views on the alliance. I know you both don't think much of the boy, but if he's the one they want, then who are we to argue the point? They obviously want the boy for a reason, although for what reason I can't see at the moment." "Could they know about the Kyuubi?" Junko asked. Danzo shook his head. "I doubt it. The 3rd made it very hard for any outsider to know about it. And if they did, I'm not sure if they would chose him anyway. I believe they might have chosen him for another reason. Perhaps it was because they chose him instead of one of the nobler clans as a way to prove that they weren't doing this just to marry into one of our clans," Homura stated. Danzo thought about that point. "That is a possibility. But I feel the union could be beneficial to us regardless. I know you feel the boy should never have been made a ninja. However, I always felt the boy would have served us better as a weapon, but I was outvoted from that. At any rate, their children could be very powerful ninjas in the future." A young ninja like her shows much promise and the boy's chakra is insane for his age. If that is passed on it could lead to a family of high chakra users with powerful justice. So you can't use the boy as a weapon, you intend to breed him, is that correct? Junko said in mild disgust. She was never in favor of breeding programs, but in the past they had been beneficial. Although she could think of better people than the Uzumaki boy. Yes, Danzo said simply. It wasn't uncommon for villages to breed new and stronger generations, and if he couldn't use the boy as a weapon then he could ensure that their village could have stronger ninja in the future. If the children were strong enough they could be used as fine soldiers in future wars. It was just too bad that he might be a bit too old before they were ready. I do suggest that they have at least one child as soon as possible, he stated to them. After all, with children the marriage alliance is complete, and if she is a traitor and a spy we can use her child as a hostage against her. If she's not a spy then it would make her more loyal to the village that's home to her child. They're a bit young, aren't they? She asked him. Danzo nodded. Yes, so we won't make the demand right away, but at some point they will need to produce a child. The other two nodded in agreement. They wouldn't push for it right away, but they would wait for a bit before they did. Danzo went back to looking out the window as his mind drifted to making some new plans for the Uzumaki children. If they were born with strong talents he would have to see if he could influence them in some way. He doubted he could do it in person, but there were always other ways. On the road. Walking on one of the many roads within the Fire Country was a tall man with long white spiky hair. He was in a red vest and had two painted lines on his face. Next to him was his young new apprentice clad in an orange and blue outfit. Naruto was walking along trying to get the next stage of the Rasengan. He had already finished the first step with the water balloons and he could break the rubber ones slightly, but Jiraiya said he wanted him to totally break the rubber balls and not just make a small hole in them. He was just about to get it too when he sneezed again. Kid, are you coming down with a cold or something? You've been sneezing like crazy for the past few days. The older man asked Naruto. I don't know, I've never been sick before in my life. Anyway, where is this teammate of yours? She should be in the next village, he told his young student. At least he hoped she was in the next village. So far all his leads pointed to here, but she had a way of running out of town once the money she owed from gambling became a bit much. At any rate he was proud of the kid's progress he was taking to it, better than he had, not that he would tell the kid that. He had an ego enough as it was. He looked at the golden-haired boy and just looking at him he could see Minato in everything, and his mother's personality as well. He knew that the boy's parents would be proud of him and how he overcame everything to get where he was. He just wished he could have raised the boy, but he was on the road all the time with his spy network and he couldn't have done it. He should have came back more to check up on the boy, but he had thought the third would know best. He sighed to himself at how wrong that was. True, he knew that his sensei did the best that he could under the circumstances, but still he could have at least found a family for the boy. Jiraiya knew full well how lonely life could get, but then he was a hermit by choice. But he pushed those thoughts away. He didn't need them, especially not when he was going to see Tsunade as well, although how he was going to talk her into the job he had no idea. She was a very stubborn woman, but that was one of the reasons he brought Naruto along. He was just as stubborn as she was, and the kid had a way with people. If anyone could get her to take the job it was the blonde knucklehead there. Suna. I'm to be what? The female yell was heard clear halfway across Suna. Inside a large building that was home to the late Cage, in a small audience chamber, there was Konkuro in his usual all-black outfit, only the hood was down and his brown hair was free, although he still had on his purple face paint. Next to him was his younger brother Gaara. He cast a look to younger brother. The red-headed boy was stoic as ever, but ever since that fight with the blonde-haired boy he had changed. He wasn't ready to kill at the drop of a hat. In fact, the usual terror people normally felt around him was greatly diminished. He just couldn't figure out what happened in that fight. Sure, it was the first and only time Gaara had been defeated, but there had to be something more to it. Gaara had for years been unstable, and now he seemed to be calm and yet controlled. He wasn't sure what was more creepy, the old monster Gaara that would kill you if he suddenly felt like it, or this new calm and collect Gaara that you didn't know what was going on in his head these days. He sighed and decided to enjoy the show for the moment before he missed it. They had all been called into the room by their Jonin-sensei Baki. The man looked a little nervous about something, which was odd since the man was hardly the nervous type. Although it soon became known to him why he was nervous, apparently the council had entered into an agreement with the Leaf Village. Something about an arranged marriage to smooth things over, he could see why they would want that. Despite being outnumbered, the Leaf Village had won and were in better shape than they were from what he heard. His older sister Temari had asked what this had to do with them. Well, Baki had told her that she was the one that the council had put forth for the arranged marriage. That was when the yelling started and he had to snicker. The only thing that came close to Gaara's temperament was his older sister's. The tall blonde-haired woman looked like she wanted to reach for her large battle fan on her back and wanted to use it on the adult. Temari, this is an order by the council and I had nothing to do with it. I was just to tell you of what is going on and to help prepare you, he said, trying to calm the young ninja down. So what? I get no say in this. Why the hell are they sending me anyway? She demanded of their sensei. Because you are the eldest child of the late leader, so it's fitting that you are sent as a message that we are truly sorry for what we did. You're a symbol for the village that we mean peace. Temari grounded her teeth as she fumed. She couldn't believe this was happening to her. Of course it made a bit of sense, but still that didn't mean she had to like it. So I'm the sacrificial lamb, is that it? Not really, but you get the idea. Despite that we were tricked by Orochimaru, we still all went against the peace treaty we had with their village. We were in the wrong and we need to repair our relationship with their village. Since both of our forces are hurting, it will take years to get back the strength we lost. In that time we both can't afford a war with each other, as that would invite others to put a dagger into our backs when we aren't looking, he explained. Temari thought about it. True, there were a few major powers that would love to see either of them taken down. If Suna and Konoha fought a war, even if there was a winner, that winner would be too weak to protect themselves. With two great powers weakened, she could easily see smaller nations wanted to expand their borders and power, and the larger nations to wipe out a couple of rivals in the deal as well. It would mean all-out war all over, and in the end only her village and that of the Leaf would be destroyed. She gripped the top of a chair thinking about all of this. She was Akage's daughter and as such had been trained in diplomacy and to think in the big picture. She could see the logic in what the council did, but she loved this village. Her youngest brother was slowly regaining his humanity and she never felt closer to him. She didn't want to leave her home and her family behind. She looked at her two younger brothers. They were the only family she had left in the world, but if a war started, then how could she live with herself knowing that she could have stopped it? I hate this, she whispered out to herself. Baki sighed and walked over to her and gently placed a hand on her shoulder. I know, but it's your duty to do this. This is the greatest mission that you'll uptake for this village, Temari. You know full well that the life of a ninja is for the country and for the village. Our personal lives come second to them, and at times we are asked to do things of great difficulty as well. Temari hung her head in defeat. Who is it that I'll marry? Don't know yet. We have to hear back from Konoha first. In the meantime, we're to get you ready, study up on the Leaf Village and any customs that you'll need to know. Temari let out a long sigh and felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked surprised to see that it was Gaara. Although his face was void of emotion, there seemed to be a hint of something in his eyes. If he hurts you, I'll kill him, he said simply. Normally that wouldn't be anything new, but there was a difference. Gaara killed only for himself and never for other people. He was basically telling her in his own way that he would be looking out for her. That if whoever she was marrying hurt her, that he would be there to protect her and help her. She never had known Gaara to offer anything like that before, and she was strangely touched by it. She actually smiled at him, and for a moment Gaara seemed to be pleased. She wasn't sure how she knew, but she just did. Thank you, Gaara. Yeah, well, you're our big sister, what do you expect? Kankuro said, smiling at her. Gaara nodded. Family is important, you are important, and I will not let anyone harm those precious to me. Temari couldn't speak. She didn't trust herself not to choke at his words. Gaara had never said that they were precious to him. She had no idea what had changed her baby brother, but for the first time in years she had her youngest brother back. To the surprise of everyone, she hugged the younger boy to her. Gaara was shocked by the gesture, and he was trying to make sense of the feelings he was getting. The warm embrace of his sister reminded him of when he was in his sand, but this was different. This was warm and he felt something nice growing inside of him. He wasn't sure what to do, but something told him to hug her back, so very gently he reached up with his arms and wrapped them around his big sister. He couldn't remember if he was ever hugged in his life, and it felt nice for some reason. He was still getting used to all the new emotions and feelings. For so long he lived for only himself and loved only himself. But Naruto had shown him where real power came from. The boy was like him in so many ways, and yet he hadn't turned into a monster. He had beaten back the darkness and had shown Gaara that he didn't have to live in darkness himself. Gaara was forever thankful for Naruto to opening his eyes to a new world, and right now he suddenly started to understand where Naruto got his true power. The feelings he had with his sister hugging him made him want to protect her and conquer her. He would do anything to protect them, and it felt nicer than anything in the past. Baki watched on as the two siblings were hugging. He had a small smile on his face at the sight. Whatever happened to change Gaara had also healed the rift in this family. He hated that they had to take Temari away from it, but duty came first. But he would ensure that they could visit whenever they could and also have enough time together before she left as well. Konoha front gate. Finally we're back, Naruto shouted out happily. It had taken time, but he and the old pervert of a teacher finally found Tsunade. Of course it hadn't been easy. They got into a fight when the old woman, although he still didn't get why she hid her true age under the illusion of someone that looked to be in their mid-20s, started to badmouth the Hokages. To Naruto that was unforgivable, especially since the death of the third still hurt him deeply. The old man had been like a grandfather to him, and his death hit him hard. Well, the fight had been pretty much one-sided until he tried the Rasengan. It hadn't been complete, but it was enough to get her to make a bet with him that he couldn't master it in a week. Well, after all the training he finally got it, and just in time, since Orochimaru had found her to fix his arms, and he found out that Kabuto, a fellow leaf ninja he met in the Chunin exams, had been a spy for Orochimaru all along. While Jiraiya fought Orochimaru, he fought to save Tsunade from Kabuto and used a finished Rasengan for the first time. Although he blacked out from something Kabuto had done, when he woke up he had her necklace and was told they beat back Orochimaru. So then they started on home, and there he was with Jiraiya, Tsunade and her apprentice Shizune holding Tsunade's pet pig Tauntaun. "Come on, you promised to heal Sasuke and Kakashi-sensei," Naruto told her, dragging her through the gates. "All right, just hold your horses," she told him as the blonde buxom women walked through the gates. She never thought she would be back here, let alone take on the leadership role of the village, but the kid opened her eyes. She smiled, looking down at the blonde-haired boy. He reminded her so much of her little brother, and his love of the village was like how her lover Dan had loved the village. Looking over the village, she had to admit, nothing much had changed on the surface. But in a strange way it actually felt a bit nice coming back. It was nicer than she had thought it would feel. She looked up at the mountain with the faces of her grandfather, granduncle, and her sensei up there with the fourth's face too. She smiled, looking at the familiar faces, and strangely enough she actually felt like she was coming home. For so long her own bitterness at the losses of two important people in her life had obscured her view of the village, and now with it gone she could see the reasons why they had loved this village. "Oh come on, Ero Sennin, can't you get Bachan to move it?" Naruto asked. "Naruto, she has to take up the job of Hokage first, and at least let her settling in for a bit. Why don't you drop all your stuff at your place and meet us at the Hokage's tower when you're done?" Jiraiya said, and then thought about it and gave him a little money back. "Here, get some ramen while you're here too." Naruto's face lightened up immediately. "Thanks, Ero Sennin." "Stop calling me that brat," he shouted at him. "How about pervy sage then? That's basically the same thing." Naruto gave him that fox-like grin as he ran off to get ramen and then drop his stuff off at his place. Jiraiya muttered about the lack of respect in the youth of today. Tsunade smirked as she watched the two of them. They were quite the pair, and she could tell that he really liked the boy. She remembered when he swore he never wanted to take on another student after the Minato had died against the Kyuubi, but it seemed that Naruto had won him over. "Jiraiya, there's something I've been meaning to ask about Naruto. His last name is Uzumaki, right? Is he related to Kushina?" she asked him as they all walked on. Jiraiya nodded his head. "Yes, he's their son." Tsunade nodded her head in understanding, but Shizune looked confused. "Excuse me, but what are you two talking about? Do you know who Naruto-kun's parents are?" she asked her mentor. Sorry, but that's a triple S secret, Jiraiya said. He can't know who his family is until he's old enough to defend himself. All I can say is that his father has made a lot of enemies and they would love nothing more than to kill his son since the man himself is dead. His mother died in childbirth, so as far as I know he has no other family. So, he doesn't know at all? She asked sadly. He nodded solemnly. I don't like it either. But the boy must be protected, and besides the kid would blab it to the mountains if he found out. He needs to mature a bit more, but I will say this, he would have made his parents proud. I mean damn, he did the Rasengan in a month. The kid's got loads of untapped talent that should be brought out. Tsunade smirked as they walked up to the main building with the kanji of fire on it. She ignored the gasps and points of surprise at her return. She and the others climbed the stairs as they found themselves in the Hokage's office, or her office now. She never thought that she would be the one to take up the job, and she wished it was at least under better circumstances. The death of their sensei wasn't something you took easily. On the outside it would appear that she and Jiraiya were strong, but on the inside she knew that both of them were hurting. The old pervert was like a father figure to them, and it was their teammate, Orochimaru, who had killed him. It was yet another betrayal in a long list of betrayals that man had done to them and the village. As they entered the office, she had memories of her sensei sitting behind that desk in his robe, smoking, doing the usual paperwork. She gave a small smile as she walked towards it and ran a hand over the surface of the desk. It had been made by her grandfather when he became Hokage, and she found it odd how a piece of furniture had so much history tied to it. She thought she could still faintly smell a bit of the smoke in the room from his pipe. She felt a hand on her shoulder and knew it was Jiraiya. He remained silent, just letting her know that he knew what she was thinking and feeling. It always amazed her at the times that he could actually act his age. The moment was shattered, however, when there was a knock on the door and two people walked in. Tsunade and Jiraiya knew them as the third's old teammates Homura and Kaharu, who were also at least two members who sat on the council. Apparently word got around fast as the two members came in to meet her. I'm glad that we were able to find you so soon, Tsunade-sama. Homura said. Yes, we are all glad that Jiraiya was able to find you and bring you back home. Kaharu stated. Tsunade sighed as she sat behind the desk. Yes, well, it seems I'll have my work cut out for me, have to rebuild the village, familiarize myself with the current shinobi roster and such. Actually, there is one pressing detail that I think you should know about that happened while you were traveling, Homura said as he handed her a piece of paper. It was the official agreement with Suna for the arranged marriage between Naruto and Temari of Suna. Tsunade, however, didn't know that before she took the document and started to read it, and when her expression went from bored to a look of anger, both Shizune and Jiraiya were wondering what was going on. Tsunade looked at the agreement in her hands. What the hell is this? Tsunade-sama, Homura said calmly, it's obvious what it is. It's an arranged marriage between one of our genin and one of theirs to seal the bonds of the newly restored alliance we have with Suna. The council has agreed to this. She couldn't believe that they had gone and done this. Sure, it happened now and then, but so soon and between two people so young. She never was a fan of this old custom, and she had hoped that she had seen the last of this damn thing. Yes, it has, Kaharu told her plainly. Since we had no Hokage at the moment, we felt we needed to agree to this. After all, given the tense feelings on both sides from the losses of loved ones, can you blame us for trying to assure the new peace lasts? Tsunade could feel her temper rising. She knew that they set this up in a way that she couldn't step in. If she did, it could be a political disaster, and the last thing she needed was for her first moment in office was to cause political strife with Suna so soon after repairing their alliance. She looked to Jiraiya for help. Jiraiya had remained silent through this as he had looked through the agreement before passing it off to Shizune. With one of his rare serious expressions on his face, he had been thinking about what had happened while he was gone. He never liked it when people were used as pawns for the games of politicians, at least when it was for the survival of the village or for the land of fire. It was a shinobi's duty to protect them, but this just didn't sit well with him either. He also had been thinking hard on the matter, and it just seemed that there was no way to get Naruto out of this. If they did, it would be a slap in the face of Suna, but if he couldn't get him out of it, then the least he could do was to at least improve the deal. I think since the deal is already made, we can't do anything. Tsunade shot him a glare, feeling like he had let her down. However, Jiraiya said, I think that if Naruto is going to marry against his will to someone he hardly knows and at such a young age, the village in the spirit of political matters should ensure that Suna isn't insulted after the wedding. What do you mean? Koharu asked, wondering like everyone else what he was up to. I've been to Naruto's place. As an orphan he has little and with a wife, and I'm guessing eventually children at one point. There is no way the two of them could live properly given Temari's station in Suna. She's an influential political figure. You think when she tells her brothers that she's living in a cramped apartment that the Suna council will think we just took their prize genin and shoved her into a closet? That would piss me off, that's for sure. Tsunade got a smirk on her face as she caught on to what he was doing. She looked to see the two old people hadn't thought about that. It was true that Temari being the daughter of the late Kage and she was deserving of a decent place and way of life. She walked to her desk and sat down in the chair as she folded her hands and looked hard at the two members of the council. You know, that's right. I don't think Suna would take kindly to her treatment by allies, she said to them. Then what do you suggest? Homura asked the blonde woman. Well, given this is for a political alliance and everything that goes with it, both Naruto and Temari will need to be given a slightly higher pay grade than normal, at least until they reach Chunin and can handle things on their own. After all, the third helped Naruto out, but this is something much different, and so they both need the help of the village, or you know what could happen. Anything else? The old woman asked, a little tense. Jiraiya, Tsunade asked almost offhandedly. I think a new place to live would be another way to go, he said as if he was thinking hard on the subject. After all, she could be a permanent representative for Suna here, even if I suspect she'll be made into a leaf ninja. I'm not saying give them a palace, but with all the ruined buildings I'm sure the council can divert some funds to fixing up a house for them to use. Maybe even hiring some of the genin to help, and of course a few things to go with it, but in comparison for keeping the peace it's really a small price. Tsunade grinned at the two members of the council. He has a point. If we want this alliance to work, we better make sure that, as I'm sure the council will want to ensure that things go well with Suna. After all, I would hate for them to find out early just what kind of living conditions we'll be giving the young lady when she arrives. The two elders knew the hidden threat in her words. If they didn't do this, she would basically inform the Suna council and they would not be pleased. They could in fact call off the entire thing, and that would cause a political nightmare. Tsunade grinned as she could see them thinking it over. She really gave them no real choice in the matter, and everyone knew it. She might not be able to get Naruto out of this, but she could at least make his life better for it. Very well, we will ensure that the council approves of this action, the old man said. It is in the best interests of the alliance after all. Konoha Hospital. Sakura Haruno was walking to Sasuke's room again. She checked on him and Kakashi daily, hoping that they would get better. With Naruto gone off, she was left alone, and thankfully Ino kept her company whenever she could. She smiled at how they were slowly repairing their friendship after their match in the Chunin exams. It was one of the few good things that came out of it. But she missed her team. She hated being alone, as it only reminded her of how things had been for her as a young child. Without Ino there, she might have ended up as just this lonely girl that people picked on with no confidence at all. She winced at the memory of how her relationship with Ino had broken up over their mutual feelings for Sasuke. Although she still wanted Sasuke, at least now her friendship with Ino was back on track. Now if only the boy would wake up. She sighed as she came to Sasuke's room, but she was hearing voices behind the door. One was the loud voice of Naruto, and she actually smiled a bit hearing it. Mainly because it meant one member of her team was finally back, but the other voices she never heard before. She opened the door and there stood Naruto, but with him were two people she had never seen before. One was a woman in a gray dress with short brown hair that had an earthly beauty about her. The other was a woman that looked not much older, although she was in fact 50 years old, with blonde hair in pigtails, a green shirt. Naruto looked at her and smiled brightly. Hey, Sakura-chan, guess who finally woke his emo ass up? Sakura blinked a few times and took a few steps through the door as she saw around the women, and there was Sasuke finally awake from his coma. Sasuke-kun. The pink-haired girl ran right over to the dark-haired boy and hugged him. Tsunade had to smile at the scene. This was why she got into medicine, seeing someone recovered and the reactions. although it seemed not all the reactions were what she had hoped for. Naruto looked a little downcast. He was glad that the boy was okay, but she could tell by looking on his face that he would have liked the girl to have hugged him like that. And the boy in the bed didn't even seem to notice the young girl was even there, let alone hugging him. Too bad, Naruto. Looks like she has her eyes on someone else, but you better get over it fast because I'm sorry to say you have no choice but to, Tsunade thought to herself seeing the scene. She let out a cough, getting everyone's attention. There's a meeting in my office tomorrow. I want you all to be there with the others at 9 sharp. Okay, Ba-chan. Naruto smiled up at her. She could feel the twitch in her eye at being called Granny again. She really wished the brat would stop calling her that. As she and Shizune left, it was Sakura that looked to Naruto. Naruto, who was that? That's our new Hokage. Naruto smiled proudly at her. She's our new what? Sakura asked, shocked. Hokage's office. Tsunade had gathered up Naruto and all of his friends as well as their teammates. Maybe doing it in private would have been better, but this way she could deal with all of their reactions and they would have to be told anyway. She noticed that Sasuke looked better, although Kakashi was sitting down still resting up. Everyone had been told that she was the new Hokage and there were various reactions, although a girl in a pink shirt and with her hair in 2 buns was looking at her with stars in her eyes for some reason. She glanced down at the profiles on her desk and saw the girl's name was Tenten from Guy's team. She wasn't sure how to start things off. How do you tell someone that they're to be used as a political tool and have to change their entire life? She sighed as she had the official documents before her of everyone here as well as the marriage alliance. Everyone, I have some important news that will be made public when I take up the mantle of Hokage officially tomorrow. Tsunade hated ceremonies and she wasn't looking forward to tomorrow. She couldn't even drink all that much because Shizune kept telling her that having the Hokage hung over on her own appointment ceremony wouldn't look good. What is it, Tsunade-sama? Kakashi was the one to ask in that usual lazy tone. There is going to be a political marriage agreement with Suna, Tsunade told them. The Suna Council and the Konoha Council both agreed to this apparently before I was here. They seem to want to forge a stronger bond between the villages, and 2 people have been assigned to be the ones to marry. One young lady from Suna is coming here to become a part of our village and to marry the one that the Suna Council picked out. They're seriously going along with that old act? Kurenai, the Genjutsu master of the village, asked. Tsunade nodded her head. Yes, I never liked it either. So why are we here, Ba-chan? Naruto asked with arms behind his head, looking bored. Naruto, show some respect. Don't call her that. Sakura said, hitting him on the head. The boy face planted into the floor as Sakura apologized. Tsunade had to admit the girl could at least try to keep the boy controlled, although she wished that Naruto would at least show some respect towards her. Anyways, Tsunade said, ignoring it, the reason why you are all here is because you all have certain missions for this upcoming event. A home was picked out for the couple that will need to be fixed up, so you all will help out with this. Normally we would use professionals, but they're too busy rebuilding the village. So we get stuck building a home. Sasuke said, not liking the idea. If they really wanted something that badly, he could just buy one for them. He needed to train and not build some home for some political marriage. Well, most of you, Tsunade said, dreading this point. You see, Naruto and Kakashi won't be doing this. Huh, why's that? Naruto said, rubbing the spot on his head that Sakura hit. Kakashi sat up straighter as many of the other Jonins seemed to be catching on. Because Naruto, you're the one that Suna wanted to be married, so you'll have to have Kakashi teach you certain protocols while the others are busy. Tsunade said. The silence in the room was deafening. Everyone looked at Naruto, who looked like he was frozen in place. He blinked several times as thought he didn't believe what she had just said, and no one could really fault him for it. Tsunade was waiting for the explosion that would erupt pretty soon. She didn't have to wait long. What? The yell was heard all over the building and a bit outside of it too. Everyone's ears were also ringing slightly from the loud ninja's voice. What do you mean I'm the one getting married? I can't get married. I'm not old enough. I don't even know her, and well. He cast a glacé to Sakura, his longtime crush. Although he kept asking her out and she kept saying no to him, he had hoped that one day she would accept it. She hadn't been as mean as she used to after the whole Chunin exams. She had even started to be nicer to him. But now he was being told that he was going to be married to some stranger. Naruto, when you became a ninja you officially became an adult in the eyes of the village, Tsunade told him simply. Unlike normal civilians, when you become a genin you are officially no longer a child under the law. As for the young woman, you actually do know her, I believe. She's Temari, the one that was on the Suna team that was at the exams. Naruto thought about it. You mean that blonde girl with the big fan? Gaara's sister and the one that beat Tenten. At that mention Tenten's head hung down as she felt really depressed. Why did everyone have to bring up her match against Temari? Okay, sure, she hadn't even touched the older girl, but it was just bad luck that she had been paired up against someone she had no skills against. She was a weapons user and the other girl had been a wind user and had blown all her weapons away. She also really didn't want her idol, Tsunade, to hear about her embarrassing defeat. Well then, I won't do it, he said, crossing his arms. Tsunade looked at him for a moment. Everyone, can you leave the two of us alone? As everyone filed out, she got out from behind her desk and stood in front of Naruto. He was looking down at the ground and she felt sorry for the kid. But he had to grow up sometime and he had to realize that being a ninja meant sacrifices. Naruto, I know this isn't fair, but this is an important thing that you have to do for the village. But, I hardly know her, and what about Sakura-chan? He asked her in a soft voice that didn't seem to fit him. She sighed. Naruto, a ninja's life is about sacrifice and doing the greater good. You want to become Hokage one day, right? Well, when you're Hokage you have to realize that you'll have to make tough choices. You'll decide on who goes on missions and sometimes you'll be sending people out who you know will die. It's not always pretty and you can't save everyone, but you have to understand. For the Hokage the village must come first. I tried to think of a way out of this, but to do so would have caused a political incident. I'm sorry, Naruto, I tried. The best that me and Jiraiya could come up with was to make your life a bit better with it. You mean like the new house? He asked her. Although he liked his apartment, it wasn't fit for more than just him really, and living in a real house was something he never thought that he would be able to do. Plus a little pay rise, but it was the only thing I could do. This was done before I got here and so I wasn't in the loop when it happened. Naruto, you have to know that this is most likely the most important duty, the most important mission you could take up for the village. You could always say no, but there will be consequences, so I want you to understand that. Naruto thought long and hard about it. Sure, he didn't want to do this, but this was something important for the village as well. He never went back on his word and he always completed his missions. Naruto thought about what could happen if he didn't do this. Although he wasn't sure what exactly would happen, he guessed it wouldn't be good if this was really important. How much trouble would be caused if I didn't do this? A lot. Our relations with Suna could be damaged and it could really harm our alliance, and given both our weakened states it wouldn't be good for either of us. She told him. Naruto took a look out the window for the village. It was true that he loved the village more than anything. It was his home despite how most of the village had treated him in his life. This was his home, and the third Hokage, the first person to acknowledge him and show him kindness, had died to protect this village. In that moment he knew that for a Hokage you had to do whatever it was for the village, even to give your own life. If the old man could give his life, then this wasn't as big a deal. Okay, I'll do it, he said softly. Tsunade smiled down at the boy and placed a hand on his head. He looked up and gave her a small smile in return. She knew that this wouldn't be easy for him, but maybe there was hope for it after all. He wouldn't be alone in life, but she just hoped that the two of them could learn to like one another, as being trapped in a loveless marriage wasn't something she wanted for him. Meanwhile, outside of her office the others were already talking about the big news. I can't believe that Naruto of all people is getting married, Ino whined. I mean, I don't want to marry just yet, but still I never thought that the first of us to get married was him. Would you have preferred that they set you up with someone from Suna? Shikamaru asked her, resting against a wall. Yeah, what if you had been set up with someone like that Gaara guy? Choji asked her. Don't even joke about that. Ino yelled at them both. The thought of being married to that scary red-headed boy from the exams would have been a nightmare. Not only would she had lost her chance at Sasuke, but that Gaara guy was just really scary. Hey, Kiba said as he walked over to them with Shino in tow and Akamaru riding on the boy's head. You guys seen Hinata anywhere? She looked kind of upset and we wanted to see what we could do to help. I haven't noticed, to be honest, Ino said, looking around and not seeing the shy girl anywhere. Why not ask him? Shikamaru pointed to Neji. It stood to reason since he was Hinata's cousin, plus with his eyes he could find her easily enough. Although both Kiba and Shino hadn't liked the guy for the longest time, not after nearly killing Hinata in the Chunin exams when they fought against each other, but after Naruto had beaten him the guy had changed. Sure, he was still uptight like most Hyuga, but the malice in him was gone. He had even been nice to Hinata again and she had never been happier. They walked cautiously over to the older boy who was with his team. "Hey you," Kiba said to him, earning a glare from the Hyuga prodigy. "Yes. You know where Hinata ran off to? She was upset and we can't find her," Kiba said. "What happened to get her upset?" Tenten asked them both. "We are uncertain, that is why we are searching for her," Shino said in that usual monotone voice of his. Neji closed his eyes as he activated his eyes. The veins on the side of his face enlarged as his eyes looked more strained. He could see all around him, and through anything. He started his scan within the building and then moved outside of it. They waited for him to finish and after a few seconds he deactivated it. "Well," Kiba asked him. "She's in good hands, don't worry about it," Neji told them simply. Outside the building, Hinata was on the ground, hidden from view as she was crying. When the new Hokage told them that Naruto was being forced into a marriage, she felt her young heart break. For years she had liked Naruto, he was everything that she wanted to be and he never gave up. When she had been fighting Neji, it had been him to cheer her on, it was him that gave her the strength to get stronger and to improve herself. He had given her the old Neji back that she had missed for years. Every time she tried to say something to him she stumbled over her words. Just once she wanted to tell him how she felt. But she had waited too long and now it looked like she would never have her chance with him. She silently cried her heart out until she felt a familiar arm around her. She jumped and looked up into the face of Kurenai, her sensei, and who was like a mother figure to her after she had lost her own mother at an early age. Kurenai had known about the young girl's crush. She had suspected something for a while, but it wasn't until that moment when she had seen Naruto cheer on her student and how she reacted to him did she finally figure it out. But when that announcement had been made, she had kept an eye on the young girl. She had seen how she had been controlling herself from crying right then and there. Hinata had left the room as quickly as she could and she had followed, knowing the girl needed comfort. She put an arm around the small girl as she hugged herself to Kurenai's chest. "I'm sorry, Hinata," she said softly to her. "It's not fair," she cried into the woman. "I know it's not. Life sometimes isn't fair," she told her, gently stroking her short hair. She wished this didn't have to happen to her, and she also wasn't sure how Naruto would think on it either. It just seemed that the happiness of two young people had just been crushed for the sake of politics. Losing your first crush wasn't easy. She remembered her own first crush and how he had just dumped her after a few months. She had been very depressed for a while until she got over it, but she was stronger for it, and Kurenai only hoped that Hinata would eventually get over this as well. It had been a few days and already, Temari was starting to feel the strain. The council hadn't told her who she was marrying just yet, as they wanted to get confirmation from Konoha that the new Hokage was appraised in her fiancé copyright as well. After that, and there were no problems, a message would be sent, and then she would be on her way to the Leaf Village. A part of her hoped that this fell through so she didn't have to go through with it, but she knew what was riding on it as well. So for the past week she had been looking up and reading all about the village and those important in it. When she had gone off to the Chunin exams, her team had been given some of this before, but now it was more in depth. She had already read up on the clans and now she knew more about some of them than she needed to know. She was bored out of her mind and leaning all this about customs, political figures and other such things that she didn't want to think about anymore. Normally she went out to trail to blow off steam, but after she had went a little overboard, Baki had ordered her not to train for the next few days. So now she was bored and itching to destroy something with her fan. She let out a frustrated groan as she put the scrolls aside and went out of her room. She went into the living room that she shared with her family. There was Konkuro sitting on the ground working on a new puppet by the looks of it. There were tools and parts all over the small mat he was working on. She hated how messy he got the place when he did this, and the worst thing was that he had his own little workshop for this kind of thing as well. How many times have I told you not to do that in here? Temari snapped at her. Lost count, he muttered as he finished screwing something together. Besides, we were just waiting for you to get out. He jerked his thumb to the side, and through the large door she could see Gaara standing out a balcony looking over the village. It was something new he had started to do lately. It puzzled them both, as Gaara never really showed much interest in the village before, but now it was like he was studying it. It was just one more of his odd behavior that he had started to do ever since after they had picked him up off the ground nearly dead with his fight with that blonde genin of the leaf. Although it was nice to see this change in him, he was calmer and even a bit nicer now. She had asked him what had gotten into him a few days ago, and all he said was that he had been shown a new way and a better way to be stronger. He didn't elaborate, and it just left her even more confused what was going on in the head of her baby brother. So why were you waiting for me anyway? Temari demanded of her other brother. We were told that the Hokage has sent us a replay and that the whole, well, you know, it's still on. He said, a bit nervous. She was touchy if he used words like marriage, so he avoided them. It was fun to watch her mad at others, but not when she was furious at you. For a moment she actually pitied the poor bastard that got stuck with her, given how much she hated this whole affair. But he was a ninja and he knew that this was a duty that they couldn't get out of. That didn't mean he liked it. They were a team after all, and they were also a family. Sure, on the outside he didn't let it show that it bothered him, but he wasn't very good at his feelings anyway. Plus they were more than a team, they were a family, and he didn't want it to be broken up. That's another reason why he was toying with his new puppet. It helped to calm him. Do you know who it is? Temari asked him. She had been dreading who it was she was being made to marry for a while now. She guessed it wouldn't be too bad if it was at least someone their own age group, most likely one of the ones from the Chunin exams, from her reasoning. They were the strongest members, and there was no way her own council would marry her off to some weakling. So for the past week, as she was studying up on the village that would become her new home, she was trying to figure out who it was she was marrying. There was the Uchiha boy. He was handsome and strong, although his personality didn't really seem all that great. That was the reason after her fist encounter she didn't take much notice of him. That kind of arrogance got old fast. There was also the fact that her brother had his sights on him, and she knew that he wasn't going to live for very long anyway, at least until he was saved by his teammate. There was also the Hyuga boy she saw fight. He seemed very strong as well, although he too had been defeated by that same boy that had beaten Gaara. Another possibility was that boy she had fought herself. She would admit that it still pissed her off that throughout the entire match he had been actually one step ahead of her, and she hadn't seen it until the end. She was supposed to be a great tactician, but he just played with her. And when he had her beat, what does he do? He gives up. Although she had officially won, she took it as a loss no matter what anyone said. Yeah, he told us who it was, all right. He trailed off, not sure how she would take it. Well, who it is? Temari demanded. It's that Naruto kid, you know, the one that beat Gaara, Kankuro finally said. Although he hadn't seen the battle, he heard the story and had seen the shape Gaara had been in. He had never seen his little brother in that kind of shape before, and anyone that could do that to him was scary. Temari was thinking the same thing. She had seen that insane battle. She had never seen a battle on such an epic scale like that before. In truth be told, she was actually a little scared of the little blonde genin. He had done the impossible at every single battle. He kept beating opponents that he shouldn't have been able to. He acted like a goof and an idiot, but during those battles she had seen something else in him. When he got serious, it was like he was another person. She couldn't remembering seeing his eyes, but his whole body spoke volumes. And now she was going to marry him. She wasn't sure what to think at the moment. The boy was too much of a mystery to her, and the fact that he was stronger than he let on was another thing. She had to sit down at the moment as she was thinking about her future husband was going to be. He came off as such a loudmouth idiot, but given what she saw, was it just all an act? She looked to see that Kankuro was a bit at odds with it, as well as he too didn't know what to think of the boy that defeated their once murderous little brother. I approve, came a slightly gravely voice, and everyone turned surprised to see Gaara was now in the doorway looking at them with that neutral expression of his. What? Temari asked him. He's a good choice, Gaara said in the same dead tone. But, after what he did, Temari asked him. She honestly didn't get this at all of them. Gaara shouldn't even like the boy after defeating him. But he had been a changed man after the event, but still to just actually accept this didn't make any sense. Gaara, her older brother, asked the younger. He's a good person, Gaara simply said and turned back to stare out at the village again, leaving his family just as confused as they had been without any more explanation. Temari just never understood her youngest brother, and now she was even more confused than ever. What could he mean that Naruto was a good person? Just a short time ago he was a murderous monster, and now he was all of a sudden saying and doing things that constantly surprised and confounded her. And he approved. That didn't exactly go well with her. Did that mean that Naruto was even worse monster than he was? No, that didn't make any sense at all. At any rate, Temari, with this final confirmation, you should start packing. You'll be leaving for the village soon, Baki told her. She sighed as she slumped down a bit. She cast a look to her family. Who knew when the next time she would see them? Well, the wedding of course, but after that she wouldn't see them all the time. She got up and headed for the door. If her time was limited in this village, then she was going to go for a walk. She wanted to have some memories of her home before she left and to have one last good look around her home. The next time she saw it, who knows how much will change when she next visited anyway. Konoha. Naruto never liked school. It was very boring at times, although Iruka had made it kind of nice. That is when he didn't get into those boring lectures. So now Naruto was feeling he was right back in school. As he was sitting at his kitchen table looking over his books, he felt like he'd rather do what Shikamaru did and fall asleep. Naruto, are you paying attention? Kakashi asked him across from him. The man was leaning back looking lazy, as he had been teaching Naruto all the things he would need to know. So far it hadn't been going very well. Naruto was always restless, and it took Kakashi a few days on how to actually teach Naruto this kind of stuff. After getting some tips from Iruka, he had made some progress, but still the boy was having troubles. Oh come on, Kakashi-sensei, this is boring. Why do I have to learn all this stuff anyway? He moaned. Kakashi sighed, as this wasn't the first time he had to go through this. Okay, well, first it's good to get to know where Temari is coming from for a deeper understanding of her culture. I mean, what if there is something that's offensive to her culture but isn't to ours? You really don't want to piss her off for the wrong reasons, right? Naruto thought about all the times he had accidentally pissed off Sakura, and Temari was just as scary. Plus she had that huge metal fan as well, and he suddenly got a mental image of an angry Temari slamming her huge fan onto his head. Naruto broke out of the daydream with a shiver. Now then, you should also familiarize yourself with certain diplomatic things as well. Well, the first part one get, but why that? Naruto asked him. Naruto, this is going to be a major political marriage, which means that you two will eventually have to meet and greet with several of the clans and members of the council in official functions. As she's also a representative of Suna, she'll be most likely be used as a link to her village for official means. So that also means that you'll be going with her to Suna at times on official business, and you need to know this so you don't make any major political embarrassments. Although he knew that would be a miracle, as Naruto always seemed to have a way of getting into trouble even when he didn't mean it at times. Oh man, Naruto grumbled. Naruto, you want to be Hokage one day, right? Kakashi asked him, knowing this would get his attention. Well, a Hokage also knows about this. All this political stuff are things that you'll have to deal with all the time. A Hokage runs the village and had to make a lot of decisions, like with Tsunade-sama's with this whole affair. Naruto looked at the books and sighed. He really did want to become Hokage, and he never thought that he would need to learn all this stuff. He just thought a Hokage did paperwork and protected the village like all the Hokages before had done. Think of it as training then to be a Hokage. Kakashi gave him that usual eye smile of his. With that, Naruto perked up as he grinned at his teacher. Well, why didn't you say that to start with? Let's get this training underway. Kakashi only chuckled as he started to teach Naruto more of the history of Suna. Later he would get him up to date on the tea ceremony, proper manners, and later on he would give him a break for ramen to help him relax a bit. While he started to study, Kakashi took the time to think on this whole affair. He didn't like the fact that Naruto would have to be put through this, but he knew how things went in the ninja world. All things being said, there were a lot worse duties that a ninja had to do. He had seen and done a few back in his time in Anbu. One of the reasons why he left it, to be honest, was that he didn't want to do those kinds of jobs anymore. But Naruto was another matter. While looking at the blonde, he couldn't help but see his father. There were times he wished he could tell Naruto about his parentage, but he was under orders from the third. He couldn't tell him no matter what until he was strong enough to defend himself, and he wasn't. But he tried his best. The training and missions he had them do was a way to start off. It was obvious that Sasuke was more advanced, but then again he had help when he was younger. Sakura he wasn't sure what to do about. She had great chakra control and would be great for Genjutsu, but other than what he got from his Sharingan to see through them, he didn't know much, unlike Kurenai. Then there was Naruto, who always wanted to be trained and took to it with a dedication that he liked to see. If only he'd calmed down and relaxed when he learned things, it would come a bit more easier for him. There were times when he felt putting his team in the Chunin exams had been a mistake, but they were a good team and it had brought out in them their inner strengths. He did wish he could have helped Naruto more, but honestly he didn't expect him to beat Neji. Do good, yes, but he had wished he could have seen that win. But after he saw what happened to Lee, he had to train Sasuke or the boy would have gotten killed, and he owed too much to Obito to let the last of his clan die. The teacher he had found was the only good one he could find. Although he learned he found a better teacher, it was a good thing too. Naruto was always full of surprises, and he was wondering that maybe he should keep that in mind in the future. At any rate, he was worried how Naruto would handle this. This was a major step, and despite everything he wasn't exactly the most mature person. He only hoped that Naruto's ability to touch the hearts of people worked on Temari as well, because he didn't want to see his student trapped in a loveless marriage. Plus there was the problem with Sasuke as well. After that trip from the hospital, he noticed that the boy had taken a few steps backwards in his social progress with his team. He was also worried about that seal on the boy as well. It seemed to be reacting stronger for him than it was with Anko, who had been given on to. He was worried that Sasuke would seek out Orochimaru, which had been another reason why he had trained him in the Chidori, to show him that he didn't have to leave the village to gain strength. But after that meeting with his brother, which he found out from Jiraiya while in the hospital, he noticed the change in the Uchiha boy. As Kakashi continued training Naruto, he was a little worried for the future for all his students. Across the village. In a section of the village that was under repairs, the genin teams were already hard at work fixing up the home to be used for Naruto and Temari. The home wasn't too bad, although it was missing a whole side of it, and the lawn had been torn up pretty bad, not to mention the brick wall around the property as well. The backyard was pretty most a write-off as well, but after a week things were looking better. Apparently one of the giant snake summons had gone through the area and the previous owner had been crushed under it. Finding the blood smears had upset a few of the kids, but that was long gone now. Currently they had fixed the missing pieces of the home, cleaned up the yard. Although there were some little improvements that still needed to be done, it was largely finished. It had been a long week full of work and the genins were taking a much-needed break. Man, this has been a lot of work. Still can't believe that Naruto is getting stuck with this whole deal, Kiba said as he lightly petted Akamaru sitting on his lap. Kiba, perhaps that is not a good topic for the moment, Shino said as he glanced over at Hinata. Kiba looked over and winced, as the girl had been depressed all week long. They had been trying to cheer her up all week, but without much success. Well, I for one hope that Temari can at least keep him in line, Sakura sighed as she sat down with a box lunch. He could use someone in his life will make him more mature. Oh man, don't start that, Shikamaru sighed as he walked over with his team. My mom does nothing but nag me and my dad all the time. I wouldn't wish that on anyone, although she did seem to be the bossy type of woman. That's not a nice thing to say, Ino yelled at him. And I got 2 bossy women in my life as it is, Shikamaru sighed. What was that? Ino said in a dangerous tone of voice. Well, at least he's getting a nice home out of it, Tenten said as she was walking with Neji towards the group. I mean, that's an improvement, isn't it, Sakura? Sakura had been to Naruto's apartment a few times. Although she saw that he had a decent place with nearly a full top floor, it was kind of lonely. She frowned a bit, remembering how besides the messes he sometimes left, there wasn't much other than the usual stuff. But then again it was just him living there, so of course it was pretty simple living without much clutter that got accumulated from a family living in a home. She looked at the house and it was a nice place, not grand or anything but the type of place she might like to live if she could ever afford it, but houses were expensive in the village. "Yeah, I think that he'd like this place," she said to them all. "I mean, he's got no family and at least now he's not going to live alone anymore." "Yeah, but she's basically a stranger," Choji told them, eating his large lunch. "I mean, we barely know anything about her. Mainly all we know is what we saw in the Chunin exams with her and her brother," Neji said, thinking about the San trio. Sakura bit her lip as she thought about something else. "Hey, how is Lee doing? I haven't been able to visit him lately with all the work." Tenten and Neji shared a concerned look before Tenten spoke up. "He's doing okay, considering the doctors told him originally that he would never be a ninja again with his arm and leg so badly damaged. Then Tsunade-sama told him about all the bone fragments that are close to his spine." Tenten and Neji were both told the full story by Guy, who wanted his team to know just how serious the injuries were for Lee. Tenten felt sad that Lee would never be a ninja. It was heartbreaking really when she heard the news, given how much training and effort put into it. He was already at a disadvantage without being able to mold chakra enough to use ninjutsu or genjutsu skills. But he put his heart and soul into training to show the world that you could be a ninja even if you were like him. Neji himself had to admit that he actually missed Lee a bit. True, he and their sensei could be annoying, but they were a team, and it wasn't until just recently when he started to see just how much his team meant to him. After Naruto had beaten him and showed him that fate could be changed, and reading the final words of his father given to him by his uncle, he had a lot of time to think on things. One of them was his treatment of his cousin. He had been wrong to blame her for the rift between the main branch and his branch. Looking at his cousin now, he actually felt for her pain, and he also had a lot of time to make up for all the years he had been clouded by his anger. Another recently was that Lee was the closest thing to a best friend he had, not that he would ever admit that to anyone. But the boy kept pushing himself, and the skills he saw in the Chunin exams showed him just how far Lee had come in such a few years. He actually admired Lee's dedication and skills and how it seemed that Lee would never be a ninja again, and it actually made him angry at how cruel life was. He knew of course how cruel life could get, but something like this just didn't sit well with him. "So, he's never going to be a ninja again?" Sakura asked, shocked to hear this. She felt so bad for Lee for the same reasons. "Well, I heard that Tsunade-sama is working on it." Tenten hoped if anyone could heal Lee, it would be her idol. "Yeah, I heard that's one of the things that Naruto brought her back to the village to do," Shikamaru stated, remembering a meeting with Naruto after he had been made a Chunin. Hence why he was in charge of this little project while their Jonin teachers were off doing who knew what. Naruto had been taking a break from his studies and they caught up a little before he had to go back for his lessons. "Well then, I hope Lee gets better then," Sakura said. At first she hadn't liked the boy, but it was just another thing that had changed during the Chunin exams. It seemed that moment had changed all their lives in some way or another. She had seen how hard Lee fought to not only save her, but during that fight with Gaara. Suddenly something hit her as she looked at Tenten and Neji. "Hey, are you two going to be okay with Temari? I mean, after what her brother did to Lee and all, plus she did beat you too, Tenten?" Sakura asked, worried. Neji crossed his arms with that usual unreadable expression on his face. "I may not like her or Gaara, but she's being forced into this as well, I would think. She's being forced to leave her village to one where she will most likely face hostility, as I doubt many have forgotten or forgiven Suna." Tenten sighed. "Okay, so she beat me. I may not like it or how everyone keeps talking about it, but he makes some good points. She's going to have a hard enough time as it is, and I can't blame her for what Gaara did." Sakura still was scared of Gaara. She had seen him transforming into that monster until she had blacked out. She wasn't sure how to react around Temari, and she really hoped she didn't have to see Gaara anytime soon. She didn't choose this, Hinata thought to herself. "I've been so sad that I'll never get the chance to tell Naruto how I feel that I never thought about Temari. She's being forced into this most likely, and she'll be alone in a village that will most likely hate her. It's not like she's stealing Naruto or even had her sights on him. I don't remember her even looking at him all that much. I shouldn't blame her for things beyond her control either. I've been blaming her for this just like how most will blame her for how her village betrayed ours and attacked. Although she was still hurting over this, it wasn't right to just ignore others. She knew that Naruto didn't like the idea, and who would? Although she would have secretly loved the idea of being arranged to marry Naruto, it just seemed like that dream was gone forever. But the thing she admired in Naruto the most was getting right back up and keep on trying, as he never gave up. Well, she shouldn't give up either. She may never have Naruto's feelings for her, but she didn't want to ruin the friendship she had with him. Yes, she would hurt, but she should be there for them as well. We should be nice to her then, Hinata said as she surprised everyone at that moment. She's going to be all alone, and both her and Naruto-kun will need support for this. We're his friends, and this isn't easy for him either. Yeah, guess you got a point there, Kiba said, throwing his arms behind his head. Hey, where is Sasuke-kun? Ino asked, looking around to see that he was the only genin not here. Well, I asked if he wanted to join us, but Sakura always asked him, and every day he said no. Why won't he join us? Ino sighed. Because it's too troublesome for him, Shikamaru muttered. For the entire time the attitude of the Uchiha was getting on his nerves. It wasn't that he wasn't doing the work, he was. In fact, it was just that the boy made it no secret that he would rather be training than doing this, even if it was for his own teammate. Shikamaru was just glad this was nearly over with, a new coat of paint and a little maintenance work, and it should be good to go, at least he hoped. 2 days later. Naruto Uzumaki had been having a nice dream about all-you-can-eat ramen. He had been on his 32nd bowl when one of the most evil creations in the world went off, his alarm clock. The hellish ringing woke him up with a start and a minor heart attack as he yelled out in surprise. While struggling with his blanket, he got entangled and fell off his bed onto the floor. He sighed, taking this as a sign that this wasn't going to be a good day. Hey, wait, wasn't there something I'm doing today? Naruto muttered to himself. When he got up and looked around, he saw that his place was cleaner than normal and lots of boxes. Oh right, I'm moving today, he sighed. Apparently the new home was finished and he was to be moved in and get it ready for temari, as they would be using it. He sighed. Although the idea of owning an actual house was really cool for him, he would miss this place. Sure, it wasn't much to look at, but he had room, a small garden that he liked to take care of, and no one really bothered him. It had been the only home he had known all his life that he could really remember, but now he had to say goodbye to the place. Well, one last meal. Naruto smiled as he did his usual normal rituals before going to the kitchen and making a cup of instant ramen. After he was done and did some final cleaning before he waited for the others to show up, they were to help move him in. Not that he really needed it, as he could always make an army of shadow clones, but he didn't know the way to his home anyway. He waited around until there was a knock on his door. He opened it and smiled, seeing his teammates there. Hey there, I'm all ready. That's good to hear, Kakashi said, walking in and seeing everything was ready. Good job packing up. So can we get this over with? Sasuke asked. Yeah, I might as well move in. I want to get in some real training before temari comes. Naruto said, excited to get this over with. Sure, Kakashi said, picking up a box. Well, now you two get something. Naruto, you think you can handle the rest? You know it. Naruto grinned as he created a small army of shadow clones. He gathered up everything as they made their way to his new place. Naruto wanted to know if he missed anything, so he went to Sakura to talk to, given that she was a girl and they liked to talk, and of course Sasuke wouldn't talk much anyway. It was nice talking with her, but he kind of missed being able to try and impress her and trying to get her to notice him in a way that she would agree to a date with him. He sighed, knowing that he would have to give up his feelings for the girl. It wasn't easy after all, he liked her since they started school together. Hey Sakura-chan, he asked, suddenly cutting her off from her telling him about how the others were doing. Yes, Naruto. Can you promise me something? Okay, what is it? Naruto was silent a moment, looking at the ground at his feet. Promise me that no matter what, that we'll still be friends and teammates. Sakura blinked a few times at the question before she made a small smile. Of course, Yubaka, we'll always be friends and teammates no matter what. Naruto gave one of his rare real smiles at that. it was nice to know that no matter what he could count on his friends. They continued on, and just when the shadow clones were starting to complain about all the stuff they had to carry, they arrived. Naruto looked on at the place. To him, he couldn't believe he was living here. Sure, it wasn't like the houses you find in the richer parts of town, but to him the place was great. When he asked his sensei if this was the place and he was told it was, he took off running through the gate. He couldn't believe it, but he actually had a yard. He could train all he wanted now. In the back there was a larger one that could easily be made into a neat little training area too. Then he went inside, and although it was mostly bare as many of the furniture was lost in the damage, what was left was more than he needed. He had his clones start setting things up as he started to explore his new home. There was a major bathroom on the second floor with a few empty rooms. One was a large bedroom that was mostly stocked up. He decided to give this room to Temari as he had his clones put his bedroom stuff in the room next, which was a bit smaller. There were 2 empty rooms on this floor that were part of the reconstruction, so they had nothing in them. He wasn't sure what to do with them. Maybe they could turn one into a room where they kept all their ninja gear. He had never had so much space to work with, so he was at a loss. There was a kitchen with a dining room next to it. There was also the large living room area, a couple more small empty rooms, and a smaller bathroom. This only had a shower instead of a bathtub like the one upstairs. "So what do you think?" Kakashi asked him, coming up behind him. "I think it will do for the future Hokage." Naruto grinned up at him as his teacher smiled back down, ruffling his blonde hair. Temari was with Baki and her brothers as they were escorting her to Konoha. A part of her kept waking up every day on the trip here, thinking that it had been all a dream what was happening. It just seemed so unreal to her, but the closer she got to the village, the more real it seemed. They stayed in inns on the way, but each day and every step just seemed to fill her a little bit more of dread. In truth, she loved being a Sunanin, and she loved her village, even given how it had treated her youngest brother and what had been done to him. But the fact was, she was no longer going to proudly wear the Suna symbol around her neck, but one of the leaf. She fingered the protector that she liked to wear around her neck another time, knowing that soon she would never wear it proudly for the world to see. "How are you holding up?" Konkuro asked her. "The same," she replied as they walked on. "I just wish I knew a bit more about this guy. I mean, was the whole loudmouth idiot thing some kind of act?" He just shrugged. "Don't know, but if it is, it's a good one. Still don't see why Gaara liked the guy so much." Still couldn't get him to elaborate. She sighed as it was more of a statement than a question. No matter how much they tried, they couldn't get him to say why exactly. It was almost like whatever happened between him and the blonde was private, but then again, Gaara also wasn't the most open person even before his new change of heart. "Well, looks like we're here," Baki said, breaking Temari from her thoughts. She sighed, seeing the massive gates. When she first saw them, she thought them impressive. Now looking at them, she realized she would be seeing them for the rest of her life as she left and returned to the village. She could see several people already waiting by the gates and guessed it was their welcoming committee. She tried to get ready for this, but in all honesty, how could you get ready for something like this? She just hoped that with time she could learn to accept her fate and deal with it. By the massive gates to the village stood the Hokage, with Shizune, Naruto, Sasuke, Sakura, and just joining them was Kakashi. "Kakashi, where were you?" Tsunade demanded as the man was already late, but that was nothing new with him. "Sorry, I had to help a little girl find her cat," he chuckled and rubbing the back of his head. "Lair," Naruto and Sakura yelled at him. "Now that isn't a nice thing to say to your sensei," Kakashi said to them. "Well, maybe if you showed up on time for once we would have more respect for you," Sakura said, crossing her arms as Naruto was nodded his head in agreement. Then she turned to her orange-clad teammate and sighed, looking at him. "Seriously, Naruto, couldn't you find something decent to wear? I mean, you want to make a good impression, don't you? What's wrong with this?" "I always wear this," Naruto said, looking down at the orange and blue jumpsuit. "Don't you have anything that isn't so orange?" "I like orange," he said in defense of his favorite color. He didn't know why, but he just liked his suits because they had so much of his favorite color, plus they were durable, warm, and had lots of pockets, and for all the pranks he pulled over the years that came in handy. "Enough," Tsunade said, getting the kids' attention. "Looks like they're arriving." They waited as the four Sand Shinobi came up to them as Tsunade took a step forward. Greetings, as the new Hokage I formally welcome you to the village hidden in the leaves. Temari was shocked that this was the famous Tsunade the Sannin. This woman looked no older than 25, but the reports she had read said that this woman was supposed to be over 50. If she was, she looked amazing, and looking at the huge chest she had on her, she had to wonder if those were even natural. She looked at her other companions and she could see that Baki was trying not to stare. Gaara looked like he was staring at Naruto, but without the bloodlust she normally would have expected. Her other brother, however, was making no attempt to not look at the Hokage's cleavage. She smacked him on the back of his head. He gave a look, but she gave him a hard glare before he opened his mouth. Naruto snickered when the guy in the makeup got smacked for looking at Tsunade, although he suddenly got elbowed by Sakura as he looked at her confused. "Are you supposed to say something?" she whispered. "Oh right," Naruto said, remembering the greeting that Kakashi made him memorize. He took a few steps forward to Tsunade and gave a bow to her. "I greet you and I wish you welcome and safety." Temari wasn't expecting a formal Suna greeting, but she returned the bow. "I am thankful for the hospitality and the honor." Naruto then smiled up at them and noticed Gaara was walking towards him. He stiffened a bit, but something was different this time. He wasn't getting that creepy feeling and of terror like the last times he met the guy. He couldn't place it, but the guy just seemed more normal than last time, although it was hard to tell with that mostly blank expression on his face. Hey," Naruto said, not sure what to say to him. "Naruto Uzumaki," Gaara said, but there was no malice in the tone. "Will you take care of my older sister like you would those precious to you?" Naruto blinked in confusion before he smiled. "Of course I will. It's a promise and I always keep my promises." Gaara nodded his head. "Thank you, and for what you did as well." Naruto asked, once more confused. "You showed me where true strength comes from," Gaara said simply, and Naruto got a huge smile on his face. The others who were watching were just as confused. Temari and Kankuro didn't know what to make of their youngest sibling. Kakashi was looking on in interest, although he had a small smile under his mask. Tsunade and Shizune were wondering what the story was behind all this. Sasuke just didn't look pleased, mainly because watching the two of them only reminded him of how he had failed to defeat Gaara and Naruto had. Sakura was caught between, confused and nervous, being around the boy that had tried to kill her and her team the last time she saw him. Although she couldn't help but notice that the guy seemed less intense, she supposed the word would be, although she still wasn't exactly easy to be near him. Images of what he had done to Lee replayed in her mind as well. "Well then," Tsunade said, breaking the moment, "I think Naruto should show Temari their new home. The three of you, I've made arrangements to be put up in one of the hotels in the village. Tomorrow at 10, I want everyone in my office as we officially swear Temari into the Leaf Village and also her place in Team 7. She's going to be in my team?" Kakashi asked. "If you weren't late all the time you'd know that," Tsunade told him, a small vein growing on her head. "Since there are no open slots and given the circumstances, I've allowed her to be placed in your team." She also secretly hoped that it would help Naruto and Temari get to know each other better through the experiences. Kakashi rubbed his chin. Okay, that shouldn't be a problem. But I'll need a week to evaluate them and get their teamwork up to speed before any major missions. D ranks should be okay for now, but I need to see what she can do and think of new team tactics with her as well." Tsunade nodded her head as it sounded okay for her. "Hey, shouldn't you have more stuff?" Naruto asked Temari, seeing them only carrying travel bags and such. "All my stuff is sealed up in scrolls since there is no way I want to haul all that crap all the way here," she told him. Naruto remembered seeing Tenten use that in the Chunin exams in her fight with Temari. That girl had used a lot of weapons and he had forgotten about that. "Hey, is that hard to do using sealing scrolls?" Naruto asked her. "You don't know how to do that. Most ninja in Suna learn that when they're on a genin team." That caused the members of Team 7 and Tsunade to glare at Kakashi, who at least had the decency to look a bit embarrassed. "I kept meaning to, but they never really needed it, so you kept putting it off," Tsunade said, glaring a bit harder at the man. "Kakashi, I know this is your first genin team, but you should at least get them up to date, or I might have to consider other ways to motivate you." Kakashi didn't know what she would let alone could do, but he nodded his head. He mentally sighed as it just meant less reading time and relaxing. Uzumaki home. Temari looked at the place that was to be her new home. All in all, it wasn't too bad. Looked like they would have some privacy, at least something she liked to have now and then, although it was odd for her to see so much green. It was the same when she first came here during the Chunin exams. She wasn't used to this climate either. It was too cool for her tastes, but during the exams she did adjust to it, and after a while it wasn't so bad. The sun didn't scorch you as badly, the humidity was a lot more bearable, but it was still different. She had no idea what it was even like to have a yard, as the water to maintain grass was a luxury that people didn't bother with, as not dying from thirst was more important. Well, come on, this place is great, Naruto said, smiling, eager to show her around. There's this nice backyard that I think we can turn into a nice training area, that is if that's okay with you. Temari shrugged, although it did sound like a nice idea to her. Whatever the shorter blonde was, at least he was somewhat practical. Sounds okay to me, but can I put my stuff away first? Huh, oh sure. Naruto led her inside, and the place obviously would need work, Temari thought, looking around. It certainly could use a woman's touch, plus if she was doomed to live here she might as well make it her own. She took one of the ceiling scrolls and placed it on a table. It held things that could easily go down here and she could set it up later. Naruto led her upstairs to where the bedrooms were, and a part of her was dreading this. Would he force her to sleep in the same bed as him? Sure, they were going to be married and she was duty-bound to certain parts, like at least having one child and the things that came with it. But she sure as hell wasn't going to be some trophy wife either, or subservient to his every wishes. Just as she was about to voice her strong opinions on the matter, he spoke up first. This is your room, mine is just across the hall. Naruto smiled at her. Temari blinked a few times, a little surprised he had given her her own room. My own room. Well, yeah, Naruto smiled nervously as he scratched the back of his head. I mean, I know we'll be married, but we don't even know each other all that well. I didn't think you'd like sharing a room with a stranger, and it wouldn't really be right to force you to, so I figured to give you the large room and I get the smaller one. Temari had to admit not only was she surprised, but she was impressed with his decency in the matter. Although there was one question she had left: so why did you give me the larger room then? Well, I figured you would have more stuff, you know, coming from a family and all. He shrugged and she nodded, also remembering the report that said he was an orphan. She wasn't sure how to feel about that, although sad she didn't really know him that well to really feel much. Besides, girls tend to have a lot more stuff than boys. He grinned, remembering some of the stories Kiba told of his older sister and mother. Temari's eye twitched. Just when he was starting to earn from points with her, he had to go and say something stupid like that. Naruto noticed the glare that she was giving him and shrunk a little under her gaze. What did I say? He muttered. Baka, she muttered, going into her room, leaving Naruto to wonder just why girls were so hard to understand. She went through setting up her room. The sealed scrolls she had mainly had a lot of her stuff from back in Suna. She gathered up everything she had, since it wasn't likely she would go home other than a visitor. So she got her bed, a nice large one with a soft mattress. Sometimes she needed to relax, and this was one of them: a dresser, vanity mirror, and her clothes and stuff. She still had her equipment scroll that held all her ninja gear and things she needed to repair her fan and the replacement fan too. She decided to leave that for later and placed it aside. Hey, what's this for? She heard Naruto's voice and she was starting to wonder if she should worry. She went down to the first level as she saw him looking at the scroll she had left. He had it open, looking at it. What do you think you're doing? Sorry, he said quickly, trying to move it back to where he found it. It just looked so cool and I wanted to see how it worked. Temari was once again wondering if he really was like this or if it was an act, although she didn't know what he would bother to keep it up around her. Fine, I'll show you, but in return you got to help me set things up. Naruto eagerly agreed with her as he watched as she used the scroll to bring out the items in it. It was basic stuff like a couch, lamp, and several other things. Naruto helped her to set up the living room, and by the end of it things were looking a bit better now. She put up a spare picture of her and her brothers up as the place felt a bit better with it. After that, Naruto showed her around the rest of it. She was surprised by the backyard as he had been right, it was a good place for outdoor training area. The rest was kind of empty, but she knew that they had the rest of their lives to fill it up. That thought was a strange one, although not very pleasant. There was a small onsen as well, although it looked to be just newly repaired. Naruto told her that the previous owner was said to have some water jutsu to make it. It wasn't very large looking, only to fit a few people, but it would be great for those days when she was sore from training. When he said how he wanted to turn one room into a place to put all their ninja gear, she once again liked the idea. When he showed her the room, it wasn't much, small, one window, a small closet, and apparently he had started. There was a self-made shelf with kunai, some wire, extra pouch and holder. The closet, she could easily place her fan and a couple of others if she got more. All in all, it was a nice starting place, and she had to wonder just how a kid so hyperactive and seemingly an idiot had some practical sense. It just seemed the more she got to know him, the more confusing he was, as nothing made sense. Although there was one thing she didn't know about Naruto, and that was when they got to the kitchen and when she took a look at what they had to eat, she was dumbfounded by what she found. The fridge held a few things, but there were 2 cupboards full of nothing but ramen. There was instant ramen and ingredients to make your own, and in all kinds of flavors as well. "How the hell can you eat all this stuff?" she blurted out. "Why not?" Naruto asked her. "Ramen is the best food there is." Temari gave him a level look. "No wonder you're short if that's all you eat." "What's that supposed to mean?" he shouted, as Temari once again wasn't sure if she should anger the boy or not. She had seen him and knew that in a fight she couldn't beat him. I just mean that without proper food you can stunt your growth," she told him in the same type of tone she used with Gaara when he had been crazy. Naruto wasn't sure why she seemed so strange, but he didn't think nothing of it, but still he didn't get her point. Ramen was the best food there was, plus it was easy to make and cheap too. Then a thought hit him. What if she didn't like ramen? How could he get married to a woman that didn't like it? The idea wasn't too pleasant for him, but he had to make sure. "So you don't like ramen?" "It's okay now and then," Temari said, but then looked around the kitchen and frowned. "But there's more than just ramen, you know. Don't you have anything else here?" Naruto thought, but in all honesty he hadn't really shopped lately, and shrugged. Temari sighed and rubbed her temples. So far this wasn't going very well. She gave him a look and hoped that he wouldn't cause a fuss. "We're going out. I need to do some decent shopping for food, but since I don't know where any stores are, you're going to have to show me where they are." "Now," he whined. "Yes." Temari, while on the way to the nearest store, had Naruto tell her and show her anything that she needed to know. She had a basic layout of the village from her time here and from her studies, but she would be living here, so she needed to know where certain stores were. Drug stores for her more feminine products, shopping stores for clothing, decent ninja gear stores, and anything else. So far he was helpful, although when she pressed for details on certain stores he only gave her a few. What she didn't know was that these were the only stores that actually let Naruto buy anything. Naruto for his part did tell her about a few others, but he wasn't sure they might let her in, given that she was wearing a Suna symbol and the fact that if she was currently walking with him wasn't good either. He noticed the same looks on the villagers, the ones of indifference like he wasn't even there, or the few glares at him. Although lately they hadn't been as numerous, he also noticed a few angry looks at Temari. He sighed on the inside. He should have guessed that she wouldn't have it easy. He took a few quick glances at her and she didn't seem to notice the looks or just didn't care. Naruto thought about the day, and so far it hadn't been very good. It was just so awkward being with her. He knew next to nothing about her, but Tsunade told him that he should give her a little space to settle in first. Although he was curious about her, sure she was a little rough on the outside, but she wasn't too mean. She was being nicer than when they first met, at least. Later. Temari now knew something for sure about Naruto. That whole issue of him being a loud-mouthed idiot being an act or not was officially over. It wasn't an act, he really was a loud-mouthed idiot. The whole thing with shopping with him had been something that was giving her a headache. The boy was very hyperactive, and when she asked for certain things like if he knew where the avocados were, he just gave her a blank look. When she found them and showed them to him, he said he had thought those were just giant seeds. Some old bat had also been giving him attitude. She hadn't seen what started, but the old lady had been spewing out something at him that made the boy angry. She had heard him arguing all the way across the store, and when she asked him what happened, he evaded why the old woman seemed to have it in for him. He just muttered about how stupid some adults were. She decided to let it drop. The rest of it wasn't easy, but eventually she got a decent amount of food. She had taken her savings with her thankfully and paid for them, but had Naruto carry them all. There was one good thing with Naruto, was that he was the perfect pack mule. All those shadow clones easily made him carry an unlimited number of bags that she could get. She smirked, knowing that the next time she got to do some more personal shopping spree to take him with her. She also learned that he wasn't like her brother in the fact that she could actually get mad and he wouldn't try to kill her. She hadn't been sure about him, but so far she had learned that if she glared at him she could control him easily enough. It kind of gave her a perverse sense of power to know she could control a genin as strong as him just because he seemed to be afraid of a girl's glare. Maybe this whole marriage thing could work out after all, she thought smugly as they walked back to their home. After putting everything away the rest of the day, she just wanted to rest up. It had been a long travel and she was tired. While she was taking a nap in her room, Naruto thought about something to do. Mainly he was thinking of how this was going to be his life now. Temari wasn't too bad, but she was still cold to him. Although Tsunade said to give her space, he felt that he should do something nice to at least show her that she was put a little more at ease. Plus he wanted for them to at least be friends at some point. They were going to have to live together and he didn't want them to hate each other. Then he got an idea. He ran to the kitchen as he figured he would try and make something to eat. Of course he usually did cook ramen, but he did eat other things at times. It was just that he really loved ramen, but he might as well make something different for her. Plus one of the things you learned while living on your own was how to do things yourself, like cooking. Of course he had a very hard learning curve, but he managed to get through it without burning his old place to the ground. Although there had been a few close calls before, the third Hokage taught him a few things. An hour later, Temari could have sworn that she smelled something nice. Her eyes slowly opened as she got up. Her body ached, especially her legs. But then her stomach rumbled and she looked at her clock to see the time. She looked around confused until she remembered where she was now. Oh right, I'm in the Leaf Village, she thought as she got up and stretched. What is that smell? She went down and found that it was coming to the kitchen. She walked in a little confused to the sight. The place had dirty dishes in the sink, but on the table there was Naruto setting up what looked like some teppanyaki barbecue. It actually looked kind of good. She was surprised that the blonde knew how to cook something other than ramen. Oh hey Temari, I thought I'd cook something nice for your first night here, Naruto said, giving her that huge smile of his. She had never known anyone that smiled as much as him in her life. Didn't think you knew anything other than ramen with how you talk about it, she said, looking at the food. Well, ramen is the best, but I learned a few other things, he said, scratching the back of his head. Temari took a taste of the meat on the dish and she had to admit it wasn't bad. It could be better, but it wasn't bad. Not bad, it just needs some more spices. Really? I never tried spices, so I wasn't sure what to use. It's those things in the little shaker things, right? Naruto pointed to the spices that Temari bought. Yes, tell you what, next meal I'll help show you them and how to use them, she said, and she noticed his huge smile. She didn't understand why he seemed so happy to be shown something so simple as that. What she didn't understand was that to Naruto, anyone willing to actually show him something and to teach him anything. Sure, it was cooking, but to Naruto it meant a bit more than that. In fact, once Temari got comfortable with a person, she wasn't so bad to hang out with. They took their plates and started to eat up. Temari was glad that her future husband had some talent in the kitchen. It meant that she wouldn't have to cook all the meals, and there was no way in hell she was going to do all the housework. Naruto hated silences and decided to try and talk. Hey, are you going to see your brothers tomorrow? At least that's what he meant to say, only with food in his mouth. Temari gave him a glare and he knew he had done something wrong. Don't eat with your mouth full, I can't understand you and it's disgusting, she said. Naruto blushed and gulped before saying his question again. Oh, well, I hope to. They're going to be there at me swearing in, so I'll see how long they're going to be here for. Naruto noticed the sad look on her face and he wondered how sad he would be if he had family he wouldn't see. It must be nice having a family. Sometimes it is. She smirked, remembering times like when she caught Konkuro stealing her makeup for his face paint years back. She also remembered how things were when Gaara was still young, before something broke in him and he became emotionless and murderous. Now she was going to miss out on all the things with her brothers, and she wondered how much they would miss her. "You're lucky to have them," Naruto said, and she looked up to see a strange sight. It was a sad look on his face as he was playing with his food. It just seemed wrong. His face was made for happiness and joy, and to see it like this just didn't seem right with her. She knew that the boy had no other family, and she couldn't begin to understand how that was like. Plus he wasn't too bad a guy. Sure, he was a loud-mouthed idiot, but he was actually kind of nice idiot. All day long he had been helpful to her, and so maybe he wasn't all bad. "Well, look at it this way. They're going to be your family soon enough," she said. Naruto looked up at that. He never thought about it. That meant they would be his brothers-in-law. In a way he would have a family of his own. Sure, it wasn't what he always dreamed of, but it was more than he had now. He smiled brightly as he thought about this. "Thanks, Temari. I never thought about it. Maybe later we can all get together then. I want to learn more about my new family." Temari shrugged. Sure, why not? The rest of the dinner wasn't too bad after that. They talked a bit. Mainly he filled her in on the team members and warned her of a few things, like how Kakashi usually was late. She told him a few things about herself as they got to know one another. Both were surprised when they realized they had been talking for a couple of hours. Temari had never actually met anyone interested in her life before, and the same was with Naruto. It was kind of nice for someone to take an interest in their lives for a change. Naruto, as the village outcast, had never had many people notice him, while Temari, on the other hand, as the daughter of a cage and sister to the most feared person in her village, didn't leave many that wanted to be her friend. Naruto offered to do the dishes. At first she thought that maybe she should do at least some work, but he said that she had a longer day and it was nothing for him. It was true, as he made more shadow clones as one washed, dried and put the plates away. She just shook her head, not understanding how he had the energy to keep making those clones. Although they were very handy to have around the house, to say the least, they could have many chores done easily with them. Temari headed to her room, thinking on all that she learned about her future husband. He was still a mystery, like to how when he looked so harmless he could be so powerful, how he could act like an idiot at times but then act smart. He was loud and sometimes obnoxious, and yet he was kind and caring. She had some answers, but it just seemed she also had much more questions. Well, whatever it was, tomorrow was another day, and now she would learn more about her new team. She sighed, wondering if this would get any easier as time went on. Temari awoke to the strange room and for a moment forgot where she was until she remembered things. It never stopped being weird to wake up in another village. She had gotten up and looked at the clock and sighed. She woke up a bit earlier than she had meant to. Well, she wasn't going back to sleep. She got up and put on a robe and went to the bathroom. She noticed that Naruto's door was slightly open and she could hear the snoring inside of it. She knocked on his door. "Naruto, you might as well get up. I'm taking the bathroom first, so stay the hell out," she warned him. "Huh," Naruto muttered. "I'll be using the bathroom first," she told him again as he muttered something as he yawned. Temari shrugged, hoping he remembered. The last thing she needed was for him to be too sleepy and walk in on her. She did her usual morning rituals and finished off with a nice long hot shower. That was one of the things she did like about this village. They were rich in water and you could shower at any time you wanted. That month she had spent in this village training during the exams, she had taken a shower every day. She loved how the hot water went over her body, since in Suna water was always kept cold. But here she could enjoy the heated water. It was one of the few pleasures she liked about her new life. She finished up and walked out just in time to see a sleepy Naruto walking towards her. She blinked mainly at the sight of something on his head. "What the hell is that?" she asked him, staring at the nightcap on his head. It was some black and white monstrosity that looked like some kind of animal head with two large teeth. She didn't think that a ninja his age would even have something like that. "What's wrong with it?" Naruto asked, looking up, seeing where she was looking. "Iruka-sensei gave this to me when I was younger." "Oh, sorry, it's just really strange to see someone with it," she said. He sounded very offended that she had said something against it, and the fact that it was a gift from someone Temari figured it had sentimental value to him. Anyway, bathroom is all yours. Alright, he yawned, and then he noticed something about her. She was only in a robe and her blonde hair was slicked down. She didn't have her hair up in those pigtails of hers, and he blinked a few times. This was the closest he had been to a girl that had so little on. He knew that he shouldn't, but he wondered if she was wearing underwear or not. He also noticed she actually looked kind of nice with her hair like that. He started to form a slight blush. Temari noticed how he was looking at her. She wasn't used to people looking at her with that kind of look. She had seen boys give her an interesting look, that is, until it was known who her family was, and then they pretty much ran off. She felt a slight heat in her cheeks as she felt a bit too exposed with so little clothing than just her robe. "What are you looking at?" she snapped out of reflex. "Ah, sorry, I mean nothing, I'm going to the bathroom," Naruto said quickly and ran off to it. He closed the door behind him, wondering what the hell was going on with him. He was still thinking about it when he was in the shower. Why did I start looking at her like that? He thought to himself. Okay, yeah, she is kind of pretty, and nice legs, no bad thoughts. Besides, I liked Sakura-chan, don't I? But I can't be with Sakura-chan ever now. He looked down depressed. Ever since that day he accepted his fate, he had been trying to overcome his feelings for his teammate, but it wasn't easy. He had liked her for years and you just don't get over that, but he had been trying. He sighed as he finished up his shower and got dressed, although breakfast that day was a bit awkward between the two of them. When they arrived at the Hokage's office, they found the rest of their team along with Temari's brother. Both of them walked up to the woman's desk as Tsunade cleared her throat. She wasn't one for ceremony, so she wanted to get through this. Besides, there was a lot of paperwork piling up, and if she ever wanted to get through it all, she couldn't afford to linger on this. "Temari," Tsunade said, putting on her official Hokage look and voice. "Do you accept your role as a leaf ninja? Will you give your life for the mission, and for the safety of the village? Do you swear by the will of fire to your allegiance to us for the rest of your days?" Temari knew that if she spoke up she couldn't take back what she answered. Saying no would cause lots of trouble, but if she said yes, it would mean that if she ever went back on her word she would be hunted down and killed as a traitor. But she really had no option. "I swear it, on my life, my honor and my blood." Tsunade nodded and pushed the paper to her. Temari signed the paper as the Hokage stamped it, making her an official leaf genin. Tsunade handed it off as Shizune signed it as a witness and then went to file it. Tsunade then pulled out a leaf hit 8 and passed it to the younger blonde. Temari took it and looked at it for a moment. It was strange to think she had to wear this, as before she had proudly worn her Suna symbol. She took a breath and slowly undid her own hit 8 around her neck. She ran her thumb over the symbol there, sad that she would never again wear it. She looked to Baki and put her hand out for him to take it. Baki shook his head. "Keep it, as a reminder of your past and of your history." Temari gave a thankful smile to him as she placed it in her pocket. Then she tied on the new hit 8 around her neck. Even though it was basically the same thing with only a different symbol on it, it still felt weird to her. "Now then," Tsunade said, getting everyone's attention, "the wedding itself will be in 3 months, on the 22nd. I figure that will be given enough time for Naruto and Temari to at least get to know each other a bit more. Baki, you and Temari's brothers are welcome to visit at any time, of course, and are invited along with any officials that I just know will want to butt into this whole thing at the wedding." Baki nodded to her, and he too knew of a few members of the council would want to attend. "Are there any questions?" the Hokage asked, looking around. "I have one," Temari said. "What are the duties that all have to do?" Tsunade was impressed the girl had thought of that, and by the confused looks for Naruto and Sakura it was a good thing that Temari hadn't been less vague. "The council agrees that they can't for the issue until you both are both mature. However, they did want me to tell you that anything before they feel the time is right is up to you," Tsunade said. Temari nodded in understanding. She knew that she would have to produce at least one child, but it was nice to know that they wouldn't totally force her to have sex. She didn't feel ready for that, and she got the feeling that Naruto wasn't either with the way he acted. But she had time to put it off at least. She was lucky, as when this had happened in the past there were times when the female or male was to produce a child as soon as they could. Well then, if that's all, you can all go now. Kakashi, I'll want an evaluation of temari with your team as soon as you can get it done, Tsunade told him. With that, everyone left her office so she could get back to work, or sneak in a small drink of sake if she could get to it before Shizune got back with more of the dreaded paperwork. While outside the Hokage Tower, Temari was talking with her old team. So how long are you all going to be staying? She asked them. At least for another day or so, Baki told her. It is a long trip back and we might as well rest up and resupply. Hey Temari, Naruto said to her, why don't you spend some time with them before they go? Temari blinked, surprised at his generosity. You sure? Sure, why not? He grinned at her. He knew that she would miss her family a lot, so he figured that she should spend some time with them too. After all, they didn't know where they would meet them next, so he wanted her to spend as much time as she could. Thanks, Temari told him. Well, first I want to see what temari can do with some light training, Kakashi said, thinking about things. How about after that I'll give you all the afternoon off and temari here can spend time with her brothers and teacher. Sounds good to me, Kankuro said. I was looking into some material that I can't get in Suna for a new project of mine anyway. How about you, Gaara? It's fine with me, Gaara told them. Good then, temari, you can meet them later after training then at their hotel, Kakashi said as both teams said their goodbyes as Team 7 went to their training area. Team 7 training grounds. Temari looked around the grounds. It was a lot different than what she was used to. There was more cover and water nearby, not to mention all the trees. The grass could take a little getting used to at first, since sand was a harder surface to fight on. But all in all, it wasn't so bad so far, although she still wasn't sure about her teammates. The Uchiha boy looked totally as arrogant as ever. It was a shame that the pretty boy had to be so cold. He could have any girl in the village if he wasn't. Although from the attitude and looks that the pink-haired girl was giving him was starting to make her sick. Fangirl Kunoichi were the ones that gave female ninja like her a bad name. Even that girl that Temari had beaten in her Chunin match had been more professional. Their teacher, however, was just strange. He always seemed to wear that mask and she was starting to think he had some kind of scarring. At least that's why she assumed Baki always hid half his face, so maybe this Jonin had damage to his lower face. Kakashi looked over his team. Although this was highly unusual to have 4 genin, but he was actually looking forward to it. It would be a unique challenge, although he would have to step up his training with the team though. The thought of the things that Tsunade could do if he slacked off too much wasn't pleasant. He was also wondering how Naruto and Temari were doing. So far they seemed okay, although not very close, but he wasn't expecting them to be all over each other after one day. Well then, let's start off by introducing each other to Temari. Kakashi said, smiling under his mask. I know we all did this on our first day, but I want her to hear it, and I also want you to list any skills you think you should let her know as well, so when she does it we can all get an idea of each other's abilities. Kakashi looked to Sasuke as the boy prodigy rolled his eyes. He couldn't believe that he had to go through this whole thing again. Sasuke Uchiha, I only have 2 goals in life. First is to restore my clan and the other is to kill a certain man. I can do a few fire jutsus, Chidori, my family style of taijutsu, some wire work and Fuma shuriken. He simply said in a bored tone. Alright, Sakura, Kakashi asked. Sakura gave a small nod. Sakura Hanero. I like my friends. I'm happy that I'm repairing my friendship with Ino. I want to become a stronger ninja as well. Until recently I realized I need to be stronger. I don't really have any of my own jutsus other than the academy ones. Sakura felt embarrassed to admit this, but the Chunin exams had shown her that she had a long way to go to catch up to her teammates. As for my hopes and dreams other than being a stronger ninja, I hope that one day I can get the boy that I like to notice me. She gave a hopeful look at Sasuke but sighed in defeat when she saw him not even looking at her. Kakashi had to admit that Sakura had grown some since that first day. Maybe if she was willing to work so hard he could help her in her training a bit more. He then looked at Naruto and gave him a nod. Alright, time for me, Naruto shouted out. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I like ramen, training, my friends. I hate people who look down on others and can't see beyond the surface. And my dream is to be the greatest Hokage ever to have lived. Temari hadn't known that Naruto had such high aims for his ninja career. She wasn't sure if it was laughable or not. On the one hand, he wasn't the sharpest kunai in the bunch, but she also couldn't deny his combat skills or power. My skills include shadow clones, sexy jutsu. This earned him a glare from Sakura, and Temari was wondering what the hell that move was, as she never heard of anything like that before. I also can summon, and I know Rasengan. Wait, what was that, Naruto? Kakashi asked him, surprised. Huh. The last two, Kakashi said again. When did you learn those? Oh, I learned summoning from Ero Sennin during the Chunin exams training month. I can vouch for the summons. I saw him use it against my brother, Temari said. Wait, who is Ero Sennin? Sakura asked Naruto, never hearing that and not sure she wanted to know with a name like that. He means Jiraiya of the Sannin, Kakashi told her. Sakura's eyes widened. She remembered the stories, as he was one of the strongest ninja in the world and one of the 3 members of the legendary trio of ninja from her village. Tsunade was one, and that snake freak Orochimaru had been the other. Yeah, that's Ero Sennin, Naruto said. Naruto, show some respect, Sakura said, bobbing him on the head. Don't call someone that. It's amazing that Tsunade-sama doesn't kill you every time you call her Ba-chan. But he's a pervert, Naruto said, and got another hit to the head. Thankfully she wasn't hitting him as hard as she used to. She had toned down the hits lately, although if he really pissed her off then they went to full force, but she hadn't done that lately. Temari just couldn't understand why Naruto took it. He was obviously stronger than the others, but he just took it. Although she had to admit that Naruto did need a lesson in manners, so she would let Sakura administer any punishment as long as the girl didn't go too far, but she looked like she knew what she was doing. Hey, don't blame me, he actually admitted to being a pervert when we first met. I caught him peeping on the women's hot springs, and he's the guy that writes those books that Kakashi-sensei reads all the time, Naruto said, explaining to her. Sakura blinked a few times. She couldn't believe that one of the most legendary ninja alive would do that kind of stuff, but she knew that when she pushed, Naruto couldn't lie to her. If she was angry with him, he always told the truth to get out of getting hit, but she had thought that a legendary ninja was supposed to be more respectable. He writes what? Temari asked, looking at Kakashi. The man shrugged and pulled out his copy of Ika Ika Paradise, and Temari's eyes narrowed. She had seen those books in Suna. Hell, Konkuro had the collection in his room even. She once took a look at those things thinking they were just some story. She was in for a surprise when she got halfway through the first chapter and the main characters were going at it like a bunch of rabbits. Temari looked at Sakura. I think you owe him an apology, given all that. I think the guy deserves to be called that. Sakura thought about it and looked to Naruto. Sorry, Naruto. He just shrugged it off with a grin. Anyways, please continue where you left off, Kakashi told Naruto. The genin thought about what else he had learned and he smiled brightly. Oh yeah, while I was looking for Ba-chan he also trained me in Rasengan, he said, grinning. Wait, you learned that in a month? Kakashi asked Naruto, who nodded. I have to say, Naruto, that's very impressive. Why is that, Kakashi-sensei? What's a Rasengan? Sakura asked the tall scarecrow as Sasuke himself looked interested. It's a technique created by the 4th Hokage, Kakashi told them, all surprise written on their faces, other than Naruto of course. You see, it took him 4 years to create it. Also it took Jiraiya-sama over 3 months for him to learn it. The fact that Naruto did it in one is mind-blowing. Naruto, can you use it so I can see just how well you've developed it? Naruto grinned hugely. It was nice for Kakashi to finally notice him like this, and for once he felt great with this kind of attention. He first formed a shadow clone, and with his help he started to gather up the chakra. Kakashi had to admit that was a unique way of creating the Rasengan, although already he could see that Naruto needed to improve in order to do it one-handed. But for a young boy like him to be able to use it alone was impressive. Sakura and Temari had never seen anything like it before. The chakra was actually visible. Temari couldn't believe that the boy was actually stronger than the last time she met him, and that was only 2 months ago. Just how much stronger will he get? Temari began to wonder. At this rate he might actually become Hokage one day. Sasuke stared at it. There were no hand seals to it, so how did Naruto do it? There was no way that the dead last at the academy had learned something as advanced as that in a month. Naruto felt the ball of chakra ready and ran forward to a tree, Rasengan. The result was the tree being obliterated as well as the ground in front of it and behind the tree as it was blown to pieces like a cannon hit it. Naruto turned around grinning happy with this new technique of his. I have to admit I'm very impressed, Kakashi said looking at him with some pride. If I had known you could master that move in a month I would have helped train you in it when I was training Sasuke. How could you do that? Naruto asked him. Kakashi chuckled. Naruto, who do you think was my sensei? Kakashi then held out a hand as everyone was surprised to see Kakashi form a Rasengan of his own. He taught me just like he taught Jiraiya-sama. Although I wish it had taken me a month like you actually beat me at that. Naruto was grinning ear to ear now. But I could still do it one-handed, so you might need more work on yours, so you don't need a shadow clone. Kakashi told him, making the boy face fall at that. You should know it was training with the Rasengan that led me to create the Chidori. Kakashi was still very proud of Naruto's skills so far. He had a good guess at what the boy could summon, but he would do that later. He was glad that Naruto had gotten so strong. He hadn't wanted to just ignore him in the Chunin exams, but the thing was that Sasuke needed it more. While Naruto was up against Neji, if he won or lost the boy would still be alive. If Sasuke had gone up against Gaara without being properly prepared he would have died. So if Sasuke had defeated Gaara, then Naruto would have faced Sasuke most likely in the end, and there was no way that Naruto would be killed in that. Of course, if Sasuke had still lost and died, then he would have told Naruto to forfeit. There was no shame in that, and if he had lost one student he didn't want to lose another. It had been a calculating risk, plus there was no one else he could train Naruto other than who he had picked, and there had been no time to teach him anything new. At least he thought there hadn't been time. It would seem that he would have to pay a bit more attention to see what Naruto's true skills were. Kakashi then turned to Temari. Well then, let's not forget our newest teammate. Temari blinked, forgetting that she was supposed to do the whole intro thing too. They had gotten sidetracked, but so far she had learned a couple of more details about Naruto. So she took a breath and decided to get out with it. You all know my name, so I'll skip that, Temari said bluntly. I like training, barbecue, salads, and light music. I loved my village despite certain events, and I guess I'll try and do the same for this one. My dream has always been to become one of the strongest kunoichi in the world, so I guess my new life won't interfere with that. I was looking forward to healing the rift between my brothers and me, but she trailed off as she might have to give up on that dream. Naruto looked down at the ground, feeling a bit responsible for her. He wished that she didn't have to be separated from her family like she was, but both of them had no way of getting around it. Anyways, Temari said, shaking herself out of it. As for abilities, I use my fan for a lot of them, but I'm pretty good at taijutsu as well. I can summon as well as I hold the weasel contract, but I usually only use the one summon animal so far. My jutsus are Cutting Whirlwind and the stronger version Great Cutting Whirlwind, Dust Wind technique, and also Wind Release, Severing Pressure. Kakashi mulled that over for a bit from what he remembered of her fight against Tenten. Tell me, Temari, are you a wind-natured element user? Of course, how else can I use wind chakra? Temari asked him, looking at him like he was an idiot. What's wind chakra? Naruto asked. Naruto, didn't you pay any attention to Iruka-sensei at all in the academy? Sakura chided him. There are 5 elements in ninjutsu and people usually have an affinity to one. Although you can have secondary affinities, these tend to be weaker though, and usually you'd only find 1, maybe 2 other secondary affinities. Kakashi nodded. Exactly, Temari, I can assume you're wind-natured. Myself, I'm lightning, but I have secondary affinities to fire and water. I can use others, but they are very hard to do even if I copy them. That's one of the weaknesses to the Sharingan. Even if you copied something, you can't use it to its full potential all the time. It's why even though I know a lot of jutsu, you only see me use a few element types. If I force to use something that I have no affinity with, it increases the drain on my chakra. Although there are 2 main uses for advanced chakra use, one is element nature like we've been talking about, but the other is shape, which is what Naruto has learned with the Rasengan. Kakashi looked at the blonde genin. So if I learn element nature, I'll get both types? Naruto asked. Kakashi nodded and Naruto's eyes lit up at the thought. Cool. So how can I find out what element I am? Kakashi-sensei, do you think I could learn as well? Sakura asked. She was feeling pretty left out. Temari was the newest addition and she was already way ahead of her. Plus she needed to learn more of her own stuff as she had vowed to become stronger. Kakashi pulled out 2 pieces of paper. Okay then, it's a good thing I brought these with me. These are special papers that have been used with trees raised up specifically to make this paper. Just take one and put some chakra into it and it will tell you what kind of affinity you have. Naruto and Sakura both took a piece as they closed their eyes and put in some chakra. Sakura opened her eyes to see that her paper got all wet. Kakashi looked at it and told her she had a water affinity. Naruto looked at his puzzled as he held up his as it was split down the center. Well Naruto, looks like you and Temari have something in common, you're both wind users. Kakashi said to him. Really? Naruto looked at Temari. The older girl was surprised that he had wind chakra since it was a rare type. Kakashi smiled at them. Well then Temari, I hope you can help train Naruto in wind chakra since you'll be better at this than me. I don't know much about that type but since you're already using it you can easily teach Naruto. And Naruto, just so you know, if you master both types, the shape and elemental, you can merge them to create very powerful jutsus, but I highly suggest that you perfect both before you even attempt that. No problem Kakashi-sensei, Naruto said as he was eager to learn wind elemental chakra. It would mean that he could make some really powerful jutsus in the future. It would also put him above Sasuke as well, and to him that was another reason to do this. So then, let's get to some training, shall we? Kakashi said to them all. He started off with the basics to see where they were, tree walking, a light taijutsu sparing as well. He put up Naruto with Sasuke and the boys were just as eager to go at it, more so Sasuke for some reason. Sakura and Temari, well, it had been pretty one-sided, but he had seen in more depth the kind of fighting that Temari did. It seemed to him that she mainly used her fan and didn't use hand-to-hand all that much, although she was still above Sakura in that department. They had them each use a jutsu that they listed off as well. He was impressed with Temari's abilities. She was the perfect long to medium range fighter, something they were missing in their team. Sakura, he noticed, seemed to be getting depressed as she watched the other members of the team, and he sighed knowing that the young girl was most likely feeling like the weak link in the team. He hadn't realized just how far behind she had gotten. Didn't she study in her time off or train like the other boys did? Maybe he should have a talk with her about taking her training more seriously soon. Now that he knew her element, maybe he could figure out a few techniques that would be good for her as well. The training with Team 7 was going well in Kakashi's opinion. By the end of the first day he had pretty much gathered most of what he needed. Temari was definitely a very highly skilled kunoichi for her age and could see why she was picked for this whole affair. She was weak in close range combat though, but that was easy to work on and that was what the rest of the team was for. He had noticed that Sakura had been pushing herself harder than normal, which was good to see, and he was wondering if it was because of their new teammate. At any rate, it was getting late and noticed that they were starting to tire. Alright everyone, that's enough for today, Kakashi said as they all stopped their training. I'll see you all here tomorrow at 9 for missions and then training afterwards. As the team members started to file out, he noticed that Sasuke was walking towards him. He had a feeling what the genin wanted and he was starting to worry about it. Sasuke walked right up to Kakashi and looked up at the Jonin teacher. You said that you know how to use the Rasengan, right? The Uchiha Avenger asked. Yes and no, I'm not teaching you it, Kakashi told him, and he could see the anger there in the boy's eyes. Why not? You taught me the Chidori and I can use something like that Rasengan thing, Sasuke told him, although he also thought that an idiot like Naruto shouldn't have a stronger technique than him. He was the prodigy in the class while Naruto had been the dead last. He had no idea when or how Naruto kept getting so much stronger, but he needed to keep ahead of the annoying blonde. Naruto is a special case, Kakashi told him. He couldn't just come out and say it was because of who Naruto's father was or because of what was sealed inside of the boy. Sasuke didn't like that word that Kakashi had used, unfortunately. Special. There's nothing special about him. He's an annoying loudmouth and an idiot. Why the hell should he get a jutsu like that anyway? He doesn't need it. I have to become stronger to kill Itachi and I won't be held back. Kakashi could see that the young boy wasn't taking this well. "Sasuke, you're very strong as it is. I already taught you my only original jutsu. You're faster and stronger than you were before the Chunin exams as well. Although I didn't approve of you stealing Lee's movements, but we've already talked about that." During the training month, Kakashi had seen the boy use moves that only Guy or a student of his would know. When he asked him, the boy admitted to copying Lee's movements from earlier, and Kakashi had taken the boy aside and gave him a lecture on how it was improper to use the Sharingan against allies. That was one of the reasons many had a dislike for certain Uchiha members. When you trained your ass off and someone just walks in and copies your hard work in a blink of an eye, resentments easily followed. "Look, the only way you'll learn the Rasengan is if Naruto trains you in it. If you ask him and he agrees to do it," Kakashi told him. Sasuke scowled at the thought. There was no way the dead last of the class could teach him, the last of the Uchiha, anything. The idea of even asking him for help in any kind of training was laughable and an insult to him as well. Naruto wasn't something special, and he sure as hell couldn't train him to do anything. "Then why can't you train me in another type of shaping then?" Sasuke asked him. Kakashi sighed. "Sasuke, I've already given you lots of training. I've even ignored some of the progress of the others just for you, and I can't keep doing it." What he didn't mention was that he also did it to keep Sasuke from being killed by Gaara, and also to keep him away from Orochimaru. He eyed that mark that was just inside of his shirt collar. It didn't look like the seal he had put on the boy was weakening, but he was starting to worry about the boy. Ever since he woke up from Itachi using that technique on him again, he had been colder and more distant. All that progress they had made seemed to be falling apart, and Kakashi was running out of ways to keep the team together. Not that Kakashi could entirely blame the boy. After 3 days of being put on a cross and being cut over and over again by Itachi, Kakashi didn't want to go through something like that again anytime soon. Although Kakashi had an idea of what Sasuke had seen in those 3 days of his own. Maybe he should see if he could get Sasuke some help. The boy never talked about his problems, as he just kept them bottled up inside, and the Jonin could see it was eating the boy up inside. But then again, who was Kakashi to judge either? For years he left the deaths of Obito and Rin and everyone else he cared for weigh on his shoulders. He went to the memorial stone all the time, just staring at all the names he knew from over the years. Although Obito was always the name he looked at first and for the longest. "Maybe I should take my own advice sometime," Kakashi thought to himself as he internally sighed. "Sasuke, you're already very strong as it is, one of the strongest genin around, and in time you will only get stronger, but you need to learn patience. You can't just become stronger overnight. It takes lots of hard, and you can't expect to just be handed everything all the time." With that, Sasuke turned around and walked off, angered that Kakashi wouldn't teach him. He couldn't understand it. He was the top of the class and better than any ninja in his age group, even older ninja. Besides, he needed to be stronger. After all the training he had done, when he had gone up against his brother, he had been swatted away like a fly. Then there were those eyes of his brother, those uncaring eyes. "You don't hate enough." His older brother's words ran in his ears before he went through 3 days of hell, watching his family and clan being killed over and over again. His fists clenched so hard that his nails were biting hard enough into his palms to draw out a little blood. They don't understand. None of them understood, Sasuke thought as he walked back to the empty Uchiha district. He looked around at all the empty buildings. He remembered when they were filled with his clan, but they were falling into disrepair. Even the old police station was now used by Anbu now. He remembered when these streets were alive with people, adults and children playing. Sometimes he could still remember the sounds of life on this road, but not anymore. They were as silent as a tomb for years now. "None of them can understand the loss I've suffered," Sasuke darkly thought as he walked through the streets. "I only have my vengeance in life. I've spent all this time to get stronger and I'm still too weak. I need to be stronger or I'll never kill him. My clan will never be avenged and I'll never find any kind of peace." He still had nightmares of that night, especially lately. He stopped looking around as his hatred grew and grew. He remembered the kindness of his mother, and his father had finally taken notice of him. He had mastered that fire jutsu after all that hard work. His father was finally going to train him, but then his older brother killed them all. He still couldn't stand to be in the room where his parents had been killed. He knew that the blood had been cleaned up, but he knew what had happened in that room. I swear no matter what I will get stronger, Sasuke vowed to himself and to the dead ghosts that haunted these buildings. I will get stronger and kill Itachi, no matter what I will. I don't care if his village is holding me back, I will find a way to get stronger. He grunted out, feeling the seal on his neck flared up. He felt the cold sweat on his brow as he fought it back, although for a moment he remembered a bit of what it felt like to use it. He had felt powerful, more powerful than he had ever felt, but he had been warned about using it. He remembered how hard his match in the Chunin exams had been because of it, but maybe there was a way of mastering it. There had to be a way to use the seal and stay in control. He started to slowly grin at the thought of that. Little did he know that he was being watched by a pair of eyes in the shadows. How much longer are we going to wait? A voice said. Yeah, this is fucking annoying, a female said. Shut it, we were to check on his progress, and until we get the word from Lord Orochimaru we won't approach him until the time is right, said a deeper voice. Fine, but I just hope it's not too long, the final figure said, being very bored. Naruto and Temari. The two genins were walking their way to where her brothers were located. Mainly Naruto was just walking with her to make sure she knew the way, and also because he wanted to talk to Gaara again. He wasn't sure why, but he could tell that the boy had gone through a change, and that was good. Gaara was a lot like him in so many ways, and it would be nice to make a friend that knew what it was like to have a demon locked up inside of you and how people treated someone like that. So what did you think of the team? Naruto asked, trying to make conversation. It's different, Temari told him. The pink-haired girl needs to train a hell of a lot more, that's for sure, and the Uchiha needs to get that stick out of his ass too. At that, Naruto started laughing, finally someone that feels the same way. I mean, all the girls are all over him, it's always Sasuke-kun this or Sasuke-kun that, man I don't get what's so cool about him. Well, he is pretty good looking and he's got that dark mysterious things going for him, she remarked, remembering her first time seeing him. She noticed the scowl on the other blonde and she had to admit, it was kind of cute if a bit childish. But he's got no real personality. That's for sure, Naruto muttered. I've been trying to get him to lighten up for a long time, but mostly he just ignores it. I mean, I once put exploding paint bombs in the teacher's lounge and everyone but Sasuke had laughed when the teachers were in all kinds of different colors for the rest of the day. You did what? Temari looked at him surprised. She couldn't believe he had done something like that. If she had tried something like that, her father would have been so angry with her. She didn't want to think about what he would have done. Oh, I've done a lot more than that, he chuckled. I used to do lots of pranks all the time. Why? Naruto thought about it. Well, sometimes it was to get back at people who weren't nice to me, sometimes it was to get people to notice me, other times it was just fun. I mean, haven't you ever pulled something over someone? I'm Akage's daughter. I can't be seen doing childish things, she told him, remembering her own childhood. Her father was a very strict upbringing. She hadn't allowed to do a lot of what younger girls were allowed to do because she had to keep up a proper appearance. Man, that's too bad, you missed out on a lot of fun, I bet, Naruto told her with his arms behind his head. So what? She snapped. We're not children anymore, so it's pointless. Oh come on, you're never too old to have fun, he said, but she wasn't talking at that moment. He grunted and started thinking about her. She was way too serious at times. A slow smile started to form on his face. If she was too serious, then there was only one thing to do with that. He had to show her a good time and make her have fun. If he could do that, then maybe she would be a little less stiff with everyone. Hey Temari, a voice called out as Naruto looked up to see her brothers and their sensei. Kankuro, Gaara, Baki-sensei, Temari said, nodding to them. So how did training go? Baki asked his former student. It went all right, I suppose, she said with a shrug. Baki nodded and cast a glance over at Naruto, who was making his way over to Gaara. So things are going well with him. He's not what you'd expect. Are you sure of the reasons you were giving as to why the council chose him? Temari asked her old teacher. She had been made aware before she came as to why the Suna council chose Naruto as her future husband. Although she did agree that he was very strong, but given what she had learned from just a few days of being around him so much, she wasn't sure just how close her counsel was to the actual truth. Are you saying that they were wrong about him? Baki asked concerned. I'm not sure I know how strong he is. In fact, he's actually gotten stronger with learning a move of their fourth Hokage in only a month, but as for him being some kind of secret weapon, I'm not seeing it. Baki nodded and put that information away for the moment. Even if the council made a small error, the boy was very strong in his own right. Hey Gaara, how have you been? Naruto smiled at the red-headed boy. Gaara looked a little unsure. He never had anyone actually be nice to him, and not all that long ago they were trying to kill one another, or at least he had been trying to kill the blonde. But it was also Naruto that had opened his eyes, and truth be told he felt better about himself a lot lately too. I've been well, Gaara said to him in that same neutral tone, although there was a hint of something different. There was no menace in his voice anymore, and Naruto smiled at the sound of that. Naruto wasn't getting that creepy vibe off him anymore, and the boy could just tell that Gaara really had changed. He could see it in Gaara's eyes the most. They were still hard eyes, but no longer had that hint of madness to them. Naruto gave that usual foxy grin at him. That's good to hear. I think I'll like having you for a brother. Gaara didn't know what to say to that. He was still getting used to feeling things, and although it was strange, the feeling he was getting felt nice. Gaara nodded his head as he too felt that having him as a brother, or at least a brother-in-law, would be nice. The boy was just like him, and Gaara felt less alone in the world now. Kankuro blinked, looking as his younger brother and Naruto started talking. Well, Naruto did most of the talking as he told Gaara all about the day so far. He looked back to Temari and Baki, who looked on as Naruto was totally at ease with Gaara, and Gaara actually seemed a bit more relaxed as well. What the hell? Kankuro asked silently to them both. How the hell does he just talk to him like that after everything, and Gaara actually seems to like the guy? Temari just watched, but a small smile formed on her lips seeing Naruto act out the day's events in exaggerated motions as Gaara watched on. Unless you know Gaara very well, you couldn't pick up on his subtle moods, and Temari could see that her youngest brother was actually enjoying himself. It was just the way Gaara carried himself. It was less stiff and relaxed. She remembered how much that Naruto had gone through to make her comfortable, and it dawned on her that despite his more annoying traits, deep down he was actually a nice guy. This was the first time she had seen someone actually try and reach out to her little brother like that. So are we going to eat of what? Kankuro asked, bored after a while. Oh hey, I know the best place to eat. Naruto smiled largely and looked to Gaara. Hey, you like ramen? Temari rolled her eyes. She had figured out just how much of a ramen freak he was, and although she liked it herself, Naruto wanted to eat it all the time. But seeing Naruto and Gaara together, maybe it would be good for Gaara to spend a bit more time with him. Well, I guess so, Temari said, as the others didn't have anything against it. Naruto was all smiles as he led them to his most favorite spot to eat in the whole world. The Ichiraku Ramen Bar, ran by Chuki and his daughter Ayame. Naruto hadn't eaten there in a while given how busy he was lately, so he was eager to hurry up and eat his fill. Plus, with the new pay he was getting from Tsunade, his frog-looking wallet, Gama-chan, was a nice large shape. He led them through the streets as they came to the stand with the drapes over it as Naruto ducked his head under the cloth. Hey old man, I need at least 5 bowls of miso ramen. Naruto called out as he sat on his favorite stool. Naruto-kun, we haven't seen you in a while. Ayame smiled at him as her father got the order ready. Then she noticed the others coming in. Oh, hello. Welcome to Ichiraku Ramen, what will you take? They gave their orders as the father and daughter team went to work on things. Well, it smells good so far, Baki said out loud. Yeah, they serve the best ramen in the world here. Naruto grinned as he couldn't wait for his first bowl. Chuki laughed as he got the noodles ready. Thanks for the free advertising, Naruto, and that's one of the reasons you're our #1 customer. So are you friends of Naruto-kun? Ayame asked them. Actually Temari here is, Naruto wasn't sure how to go about it. He had told them of what was going on with him a while back, but he hadn't mentioned names to them. I'm Temari, the blonde female said. I'm Naruto's fiancé. Copyright. That caused both cooks to pause for a second. They hadn't known who was going to marry Naruto, although the old ramen cook had to admit the girl was pretty, if a little serious. Ayame however went right into Temari's face, nearly making the newly made Leaf Genin pull back a bit in her seat. "Oh, so you're the one that he's told us about." Ayame looked the girl over and it was making Temari a little uncomfortable. "Please take care of Naruto-kun. He's a really nice guy and he could use someone in his life, plus maybe you can help keep him out of trouble." "Nei-chan," Naruto said, embarrassed. Kankuro chuckled at the look on the boy's face. "Shut it, makeup boy. What did you call me?" Kankuro shouted out. "This is war paint for your information. I think it's really makeup. After all, you dress up like a cat and play with dolls." Naruto said, crossing his arms. "They're not dolls," the puppet user said in the defense of his beloved puppets. Temari couldn't stop a snickering escaping from her mouth. This wasn't the first time someone said this to her brother, although not this blatantly before. She also noticed that Gaara had a slight twitch on the side of his mouth for a second. She was surprised that Gaara had nearly smiled at that. "Oh, I think playing with dolls is cute," Ayame smiled. "And it shows you're really comfortable in your own masculinity to wear makeup." Kankuro just sat there with his mouth open. He then slumped down into his seat sulking. Being insulted by the blonde loudmouth was bad enough, but now the pretty girl behind the counter was getting in on it too. Hell, even his sister often said that was why he couldn't get a date. They started to eat up. Once the orders were ready, they were surprised by just how much Naruto could eat. As they started to eat up, Temari got to know the two ramen stand workers. They seemed fairly nice and they seemed to really like Naruto as well, and the ramen wasn't bad either. By the time they left, Temari had to admit that the place, while not fancy, was still kind of nice. And with how much Naruto spent, it was little wonder why he was their #1 customer. "Ah, now that's what I call a good meal," Naruto said, patting his stomach. So far he had to admit that things were going well. He was getting along with Temari and her brothers and former teacher. Although he kept trying to sneak a look under that half of Baki's face that was covered. Honestly, why did some ninja have to hide their faces? He got enough of that with Kakashi. Although Naruto was having such a good time that he wasn't watching where he was going, and when they turned the corner he nearly slammed into someone. "Hey, careful Naruto." Naruto snapped out of his thoughts as he nearly ran into Tenten. "Oh man, sorry about that, Tenten," he said, and then noticed that she was with Neji and Lee on his crutches. "Hey Neji." "Hey there, fuzzy brows." "Naruto-kun, it is very youthful to see you again." Lee smiled at him, but then noticed that his two friends weren't as happy. In fact, they were looking at Naruto's companions, especially to Gaara. Lee locked eyes with the red-headed genin that had put him into this condition, and said boy stared back. Naruto looked at both groups and swallowed nervously. There was a lot of bad blood between the two groups. First there was how badly Tenten lost to Temari, then there had been what Gaara had done to Lee. He was hoping that a fight wouldn't break out, as things had been going to great today. But given his luck, he should have known that something would ruin things. To say there was tension was like saying that Jiraiya was a pervert. Tenten took a hard look at Temari, but she had promised not to start anything with her. But Gaara, on the other hand, she had seen how bad Lee had taken to his injuries at first, and what the boy had done in the Chunin exams had been out of line in her opinion. Neji had his usual cold look on, although if you were to look more closely you could see that his eyes were a little colder than his face. He too was thinking the same things as Tenten about Gaara. Although he knew that the other boy was very strong, if he tried to hurt his teammate again he would take him down as fast and as hard as he could. There was a heavy silence, and then Gaara of all people walked towards Lee. Everyone tensed up as the boy got close to the green-clad genin. Gaara looked at the injuries that he had caused when he had been less than stable. Lee had given him one of the best battles in his young life, had pushed Gaara to his limits, but in the end Gaara had not only beat Lee, he had taken away his ability as a ninja by the looks of it. He had tried to kill the boy until that older green-clad ninja jumped in the way and had stopped his sand. He remembered how the man had said that Lee was important to him, and at that time he couldn't understand that. But now he did understand what the man had meant that day, and he also understood the full impact of what he had done. This was one of Naruto's friends and he had hurt Lee very badly. It left a bad feeling in the pit of his stomach. He hadn't felt that emotion since he was a little child, when his sand would go out and hurt a child by accident. Gaara remembered getting medicine and offering it to the boy, but that had not worked out as he had hoped. Now looking at Lee he felt that same emotions all over again. He looked into Lee's eyes and said something that no one expected him to say. "I'm sorry," Gaara told him. Everyone blinked in surprise, although Lee grew a small smile on his face. "You don't have to do that," Lee smiled at him. "What, Lee? Well, he crippled you," Tenten shouted at him. "I know, but we are ninja. In our line of work we enter battle knowing that something like this could happen or that we can die," Lee said with his full resolve in his voice. "I could have quit that match at any moment, but I wanted to push myself to my limits, maybe even beyond my limits. We all knew that the Chunin exams were dangerous when we entered as a team, and I was fully prepared to die for my Nindo." Lee looked to Gaara again. "You are one of the strongest people I know, and it was an honor to fight you, and I hope to do it again." "What?" Gaara asked, surprised as was everyone else there. Lee gave Gaara a thumbs up with a smile. "Lady Tsunade has said that she is looking into my condition. I am sure that with her help I'll heal, and when I do I hope we can have a friendly rematch one day." Lee had been meaning to surprise his friends with the news later that day, hence why they were on their way to meet Guy. Lee wanted to tell his team all together, but it would seem that he would have to tell Guy second. Although he was worried, as Tsunade said that the treatment was looking dangerous, but if he couldn't be a ninja then there wasn't anything else that Lee would want in life. He still had a dream to pursue, and if he died in the pursuit of that dream, then so be it. Naruto was all smiles at that. "All right. I knew that Ba-chan wouldn't let us down. Just you wait, Lee, she'll make you better than ever." Tenten smiled, and even Neji had a small smile on his face at that. It would be good to have Lee back. Gaara himself wasn't sure how he felt, but he felt better. Unlike the boy that he had once hurt, Lee was forgiving him for what he had done. It made the bad feelings inside of him lessen and slowly replaced by something else. "I would like that," Gaara told Lee. "Then when I am ready we will have the most youthful match," Lee shouted out. Gaara wasn't sure by what he meant by youthful, but he nodded anyway. For the past week things had been going okay with her life. Temari was getting used to the village, although it was still not her home. After her brothers and Baki had left, she had felt very alone even with sharing a home. But at least Naruto turned out to be decent company. She had been also started with the wind training with Naruto, although he was starting to have some trouble with it. She did her best to explain it, but it seemed that Naruto worked best with simple instructions and then he could get along fine enough. In Suna, when someone had wind elemental abilities you had to cut a rock with it. It wasn't easy as a rock was very tough, but once you did that anything else was child's play. Basically you had to hold a rock in your hand and focus on the wind chakra and force it to cut the rock up. Temari had managed to do it after nearly 6 months of training. She constantly made small cuts into her first rock over and over until it broke. Then she had to try and do it with less cuts each time until she could cut a rock with only one try. She had found out that typically in this village you would use a leaf, but it wasn't like there was much plant life in her home. You had to use what you could, and with Naruto's huge chakra she felt that a rock would be better to get him to do it properly. He was more of a blunt fighter anyway, and with wind jutsus at his disposal he could be very devastating in battle. After all, wind wasn't called the battle element for nothing. Besides that, it was just slightly odd living in the leaf village. She got some cold looks, but she was prepared for it. Although she would admit that it was kind of lonely, but she was used to that as well. After all, most of her life her father had been cold and distant, her younger brother obsessed over his puppets, her youngest brother had until recently been completely insane. Baki had been more teacher than friend, and because of her Gaara and her status she didn't have many friends. But at least she was in her own village. Here she didn't have the same sense of belonging that she had on her village. So she was currently lying on a small ledge looking outside the window of her room, looking outside. She could smell the scent of the trees and flowers. She was surprised that Naruto actually gardened at least a little and had a hard time telling what was a weed and what was a plant, but she still missed the smell of desert lilies as well. While she was at the window, Naruto was up in his room getting all the supplies he needed for the day. His team had the day off, and Tsunade suggested to him that on days off he might as well get to know Temari more. Well, given what he heard of her childhood being just as lonely as his, only less fun it seemed. Well, he was going to fix that up. He put his supplies into a sealing scroll, and he wished he had known this before. Knowing how to seal things up would have made his life so much easier, and he was wondering why that was never taught in school. Maybe he'd ask Iruka next time he saw him. At any rate, this would be a nice way of thanking Temari for showing him how to do it. He went in search of Temari as he had something planned out for the entire day. He found her in her room looking out the window. He paused for a moment as he just watched her. He guessed she was thinking about her home he would be if he was in her position. "Hey, Temari," he asked. Temari looked over to him. "What's up? You okay?" Naruto asked, seeing the look of longing in her eyes. "I'm fine," she said, getting up and away from the window. Naruto was silent a moment as he looked at her. She was putting up a false face, which was something he had a lot of experience in. He knew the signs of someone that was hiding any kind of pain as he used that same mask himself a lot of the time. "I know you miss your home and I'm sorry you had to leave it," Naruto told her bluntly. Temari hadn't thought she looked that transparent, but she just shrugged it off. "Not your fault, sometimes you just have to take what life gives you. Nothing can change it, so I'm not going to let it dominate my life." "You know you never said, but what are the things you miss the most?" Naruto was genuinely curious. "I mean, I know what I would miss if I had to leave, but I've never been to Suna." Temari shrugged. "Well, there is a few things. There was this nice coffee shop that served this great stuff there. I miss the sunsets that I could see on the mountain ranges. In the right season the sands can look like they're on fire for a moment. The way the west wind would bring the scent of desert lilies was also nice." Temari lost herself in her memories of her home. Sure, it was a bit desolate compared to other villages, but it was still her home. Naruto could see the downcast look on her face, and he figured that she really did need what he had planned out. Plus he filed away those little pieces of information away for later as well. He went over and grabbed her hand, surprising the taller blonde. "What the hell?" Temari asked, being dragged through the home. "Come on, you're coming with me," Naruto simply said as she nearly dragged her out of the room. She barely managed to grab her fan before leaving as well. It wasn't that she was expecting trouble, it was just that she always went everywhere with it. It was when he finally stopped on the top of a building that she finally managed to get him to stop and explain. She wanted to know why they had the day off. He came and dragged her halfway across the village to some building looking around for someone. Naruto grinned at her. "Well, you said that you never got to have any fun in your life." "I said I never had a normal childhood, and for the record I did have fun at times," she said, putting her hands on her hips.
"Yeah, but I doubt it was much. So I'm going to show you just how much fun you missed out on. One of the things I'm going to show you is how to pull pranks on people as well." Naruto told her, taking out a scroll. "This is stupid," Temari said, turning around to leave. "What, you scared, or just think that you can't pull one off?" Naruto challenged her. He saw her pause in mid-step, and he knew that she was a very proud girl, and like a lot of proud people, couldn't pass up a challenge to their pride. Now he just needed to push her once more. Plus, I guess the fact that the first target is Shikamaru means nothing, huh? Temari turned around to see Naruto pointing in the distance. She took a long look and managed to spot the boy laying on some bench on the top of the building, looking like he was sleeping of all things. An eyebrow started to tick on her head at that. She never did forgive him for that humiliation in the Chunin exams. Their battle had been long, but in the end he had outmaneuvered her the entire time. He had her in that shadow technique of his, and what did he do? He gave up. Sure, she technically won, but she didn't feel like it was a win. The fact that he didn't like to fight girls, and how work was too troublesome was also very irritation to her. The boy was just so lazy and a bit sexist in her opinion, plus the fact that he was the only one promoted to chunin, and he still shirked off the responsibility. If she had been made a chunin, she would have honored the position and not sat around sleeping the day away. What do you have planned? She asked Naruto, who just grinned a bit evilly.
He pulled out a sealing scroll, and suddenly in a cloud of smoke lots of hot air balloons tied down and other balloons that looked like they were filled with water.
There were more of the hot air ones than the water ones, and she was wondering what he was thinking of. Can you make sure that these balloons float over him with your fan? Naruto asked, and then Temari suddenly got where this was going. She had a grin on her face as she quickly helped him to tie the hot air balloons to the water balloons. Over with Shikamaru, he was enjoying a restful day. Sure, he was supposed to show up for a mission assignment at the Hokage's office, but she never did say when he had to show up. So he was taking his time enjoying the clouds as he liked to.
He loved clouds. They were just so carefree and slowly did whatever they felt like doing, which was just floating along really. He closed his eyes listening to the wind gently blowing. Then the wind picked up a bit. He didn't think much of it until a shadow fell across his face. He just thought a cloud got in front of the sun.
"Now!"
yelled out a familiar voice. He opened his eyes just in time to see several shuriken hit several balloons, popping them, but then he noticed that several balloons were now falling, which made no sense unless they were filled with.
Splash! Shikamaru got up after the water balloons hit him and looked over, seeing Naruto laughing his ass off with Temari, who looked like she was enjoying herself.
What the hell, Naruto?
Shikamaru yelled over to him.
Sorry, nothing personal, just trying to show Temari the joys of pranking people. Well, got to go, we got a lot more targets to hit, Naruto called out as he and Temari ran off.
Shikamaru sighed as he wiped the water off his face. He hated it when he got pulled into one of Naruto's pranks. Sure, they were fun when they happened to other people, but not to him, although he will admit that was a unique one. But still, why did he have to ruin his cloud watching? He managed to get out of some work for Tsunade for the day, and then that happened, and worse, he seemed to have recruited Temari of all people to help. Those two blondes together seemed to be just so troublesome. Shikamaru, where the hell are you? Ino's voice yelled out from nearby. Lady Tsunade asked me to come looking for you for work. Damn it, the young chunin sighed. Figures that she would send Ino after me. Shikamaru, get out here now. I'm using my break time from the flower shop, so you better get your lazy ass out here now, or when I find you I'll use my mind transfer jutsu and make you walk to the Hokage's office myself.
The thing was, he knew that she wasn't bluffing. He sighed as he got up off his spot, as now his whole day was ruined. First Tsunade, then Naruto and Temari and now Ino, he muttered as he went to find Ino.
Why is it that besides my mom, the most troublesome people I know are blondes? There you are. Where the hell were you? Dot, and why are you all wet? Ino asked him when he saw her. He just muttered something about troublesome blondes and went to the Hokage's tower. Elsewhere, Hinata was walking the streets of her village. She wasn't really caring much where she was going.
Her team had finished off with a mission and she had said her farewells.
She just wanted to be alone for the moment. Ever since Naruto's announcement of his marriage, she had been very depressed. She still broke down crying at times late at night in her room a few days. It just wasn't fair. She should have said something to him all those years ago, but she wasted all that time because she had been so shy. She was still shy, and she hated being like that. What if she had found the courage to admit her feelings? If she and Naruto had been a couple, then would have the Hokage refused it? Then there was the fact that her family would most likely not approve of Naruto, at least not before the Chunin exams when he defeated Neji. She had seen how the village had changed a bit. Some people actually looked at Naruto without the cold looks, although she still saw many that held whatever resentment they had. She never did figure out why so many people seemed to dislike Naruto so much. One of the reasons that she came up with was that maybe his family had fallen into some dishonor in the face of the village. It would explain much, but she never heard of any Uzumaki family unless Naruto was the last. She found herself at the park. For some reason she stood there watching everyone having a fun time. She saw families there, children at play, and she felt a wave of sorrow over her. Her family wasn't really that warm. They had to be the picture of perfection and nobility. Her own father trained her and her sister very hard because Hinata knew that the main branch had to be the strongest, and she knew that she was a disappointment to the standards of her family. Although her father was cold, he wasn't totally abusive to her. It wasn't like he hurt her physically, but she did feel the pain of his disappointment in her. He always would say that she needed to be stronger, and she knew that he didn't know that she had overheard what he had said to Kurenai on that day. She wanted to make her father proud of her to be stronger, but she knew that she still had a ways to go. Looking at the children at play reminded her of her own lonely childhood. She never had any friends, really, while growing up.
Maybe that was one of the reasons she noticed Naruto at an early age. He was lonely just like she had been. He wanted to be noticed as well, so he acted out and he trained himself so hard all the time. Hinata remembered the times she would secretly watch as he kept pushing himself long after others went home for the day. "Hey, Hinata." She jumped as she was broken out of her thoughts as she turned around to see Kiba there with Akamaru. Kiba-kun.
We've all been a bit worried about you lately, Kiba told her, so I decided to see if you needed someone to talk to. Thanks, Hinata said, giving a small smile as she looked back to the playground.
Many of the children were leaving with family, it seemed, for the moment. Kiba stood beside her as she was looking over the playground, wondering what she was looking at.
He knew that she was really depressed over the whole marriage thing with Naruto. He never knew just how much she must have liked him until this whole thing turned up. He hated seeing her like this, actually. She was just the most kindest person that he ever met. She didn't deserve to be miserable like this. So, what are you thinking about? He asked. Just thinking about when I was younger. Kiba thought about it for a moment. You know, I can't remember seeing you all that much outside of the academy. Hinata jumped a bit as she looked down at her feet. He noticed the look and was worried. I just figured you had your own friends to play with, Kiba told her. Hinata's mood got a bit darker. I didn't really make friends until I was put on Team 10. Kiba was surprised by that. He figured that she would have had some friends, or at least some in her own clan. But the look on her face told him otherwise. He couldn't remember seeing her playing with others when he was younger, not that he looked for her. She was so quiet and she just blended into the background so much that you could easily overlook her. Now that they were put onto the same team, he had taken notice of her. She had become his friend like Shino had, and now he wished that he had been her friend when they were younger. Well, if he couldn't change the past, he would at least give her something better for the present. Come on with me, Kiba said as he grabbed her hand and led her into the playground. Kiba-kun? She asked.
Let's just say I want to make up for you missing out on a few things,
Kiba said as they got to a set of swings. He asked her to sit down, and she nervously did, although she did with a small smile. She knew that she might be a bit old for this, but she never really got the chance to do something like this. In fact, she had been too scared as a little girl to try it out. Kiba helped her when he figured out that she'd never been on a swing before, so he got behind her and started pushing. Hinata had to admit it was fun. She had never had a friend to push her on one of these things, and the feeling she got when she got up made her feel funny in her stomach area, but in a good way.
She saw Akamaru running below her, barking as he would try and jump up to tap her feet, so she tried to move her feet like targets for the pup.
She actually laughed a bit, and Kiba had heard her giggle, but never really laughed before. It was a nice sound, actually, and for some reason made him smile.
Mommy, aren't they a bit big for swings?
A little boy asked his mother as they passed by them. The mother just smiled at her son. Don't point, Kenji. Just leave the young couple on their date. At the word date, both young teens froze up, and it didn't help that they froze with his hands resting on her hips. Both of them noticed this and blushed as Hinata jumped off the swings and Kiba put his hands behind him quickly. Both avoided looking at the other for a moment. Kiba just meant to cheer her up, not make it look like he was dating her. So, you know, Kiba wasn't sure what to say at the moment, and Akamaru gave a small whine and turned away. The little guy wasn't going to help him out with this one, it would seem. Thank you, Kiba-kun, Hinata said quickly to avoid anything more embarrassing happening between them. She knew that he was just trying to cheer her up after all. Kiba blinked and then smiled at her. Sure, no problem. Just remember, if you're ever sad or lonely, me and Akamaru would be glad to help out. Akamaru barked to let her know that he agreed with his master. Hinata smiled, feeling a bit better now as she nodded her head. Elsewhere, so far the blonde duo of Temari and Naruto had hit several targets throughout the day. Naruto felt good doing some pranks again. He hadn't the time since he made genin after all, and he was well overdue. After they hit Shikamaru, they went on to the rest of the town as well. Anko had been about to enjoy her dango when she took her first bite, her mouth nearly caught on fire. She went to drink all the water she could. Apparently the server had been Naruto in a henge while Temari had put the hot sauce on the dango. Naruto had been meaning to getting back at Anko for cutting his cheek and freaking him out during the Chunin exams.
They later hit Kakashi, posing as a kid and their cat stuck in a tree. The Jonin had left with several scratches on his mask because of it.
A couple of the more stuck-up Hyugas from the main branch ended up with paints of all different colors all over them. A person who had made an anti-Suna remark against Temari ended up hanging upside down with their pants around their ankles. A few other things as well before they took a break. They were resting on a bench and Temari had to admit she had a lot of fun, despite herself. See, told y'all it was fun, Naruto said, grinning at her. Okay, so you were right. Temari told him, still smiling. It felt good in a way to cut loose. She never got the chance to do anything like that, plus Naruto was very good at it. How often did you do this? Oh, I used to prank people all the time, Naruto said proudly. A few times I never even got caught, but my best prank was the one I pulled before I graduated. Do I want to know? She asked in good humor. See that mountain range with the faces of all the Hokages? Naruto asked her. I painted it all up after an hour. I had to get up early for that one, but it was worth it. You didn't. Temari said, both shocked and impressed that he was able to do that without anyone seeing him until it was done. I had Jonins, Shunins, and Anbu chasing me for over an hour. Naruto laughed, and despite herself, Temari gave a small laugh at that as well. She was starting to see that surprising people was a trait that Naruto had. She never would have done anything like that back home. Her father would have been so angry with her as she had painted up the side of the rock wall that shielded their village. Well, if it isn't the dead last and the Suna girl, a slightly annoying female voice said, and instantly Naruto's mood dropped. He looked and was surprised to see two girls, both of them had been in his class. One was Amy, and he thought the other was named Haruka. Both of them were die-hard members of the Sasuke fan club. In fact, Amy was kind of a bully in class and picked on others. Man, I'm not surprised that you get the job of marrying this girl, Haruka said, grinning. What the hell is that supposed to mean? Naruto asked her angrily. He never liked these two. That, of course, the dead last would get chosen for such a horrible fate. I mean, to marry this girl is laughable. She's just a peace offering so our village doesn't crush hers, although they certainly deserve it for betraying us like they did, Amy said in a dark tone. First off, little girl, Temari said, standing up to her full height, which was at least a foot taller than the other girl. My father was murdered and replaced by Orochimaru and tricked us into his plans. And as for Naruto, I don't know why you don't thank him, as he's the one that saved your village from my brother Gaara. Oh, please, like he could have done anything, Haruka said, waving it away. I bet he only got in Sasuke-kun's way when he fought. The Uchiha?
Temari actually laughed at that. He couldn't land a blow on my brother, and Naruto was the one that beat Gaara. I should know, as I was there watching it all, and let me tell you both something, he's a lot stronger than the Uchiha boy. I don't think so, Amy yelled out at her. No one is better than Sasuke-kun. Yeah, Haruka said. Come on Temari, let's get out of here, Naruto said as he gently grabbed her wrist and led her away. Temari was fuming. It was bad enough a couple of arrogant bitches were bad-mouthing her village, but how could Naruto stand that kind of verbal abuse like that? He was clearly stronger in her view, but why did those girls not know that? Maybe it was because they were blinded by their views of Sasuke Uchiha. She had seen this all too often in her own village. Girls like that made her sick as they weren't Roth being ninja in her opinions, and to top it all off they hadn't even been in the Chunin exams, and Naruto had gotten into the finals on his first try. So there was no way they could look down at him as he had accomplished more than they most likely had. She was about to demand why he didn't let her just trash those girls when she noticed the evil smirk on his face. "What are you planning?" Temari narrowed her eyes. Naruto's grin only grew. "Why fight them when we can just get even?" Later that day Amy was walking through the village. She was still smirking about putting that Suna girl in her place. She would never forgive the Suna for what they had done. For one thing, her home had been one of the buildings damaged and her family had to start over again. It wasn't fun and she had a lot of good memories of her home. She was about to see how her mother was doing when she froze in horror. There not 12 feet away was Haruka and Sasuke of all people, and they were hugging each other. "Oh Sasuke-kun, I'm so glad that you agreed to go out with me," Haruka smiled at the boy. "I couldn't stand it anymore. You're the most beautiful girl in the village," Sasuke said. "Better than Amy." "Oh please, that hag couldn't compare to you, Haruka-chan," Sasuke said as she sighed. "She is pretty ugly, huh?" Haruka said as both laughed. They didn't see Amy as she had ducked around the corner of a building to hear them, but she was gritting her teeth now. She couldn't believe that Haruka would say that about her, let alone steal her Sasuke-kun. "Meet me at the park in an hour, okay?" Sasuke asked. "Sure thing," Haruka said happily. That was enough for Amy as she stormed off. If Haruka was thinking she was getting away with this, then she had another thing coming. When she was out of sight, both Sasuke and Haruka smiled as in a puff of smoke there stood both Naruto and Temari. "Okay, we got one, now we just need to get the other one," Naruto grinned as Temari matched it. An hour later, both Temari and Naruto were waiting in the trees for their targets. They had pretty much pulled the same stunt with Haruka, so now they just had to wait for them to meet up and for the fireworks to start off. Temari had to admit this way of revenge was more work, but it was a lot more fun, plus they couldn't get into trouble for it. While doing this, she figured that her beating the hell out of a couple of genin, even if they had it coming, would look bad, so this way both girls got what was coming to them and she and Naruto were just looking on, being innocent of the whole affair. "Hey, I think I see target one," Naruto smiled. "And there is the other one," Temari said, pointing as the other was walking in the opposite way towards them. When both girls saw each other, it took only for a second before both of them grew furious seeing the other girl. "You bitch," both girls yelled out as they started the verbal fighting. This caused many onlookers. Both were saying how the other was a two-timer, a bad stabber, and every other name they could think of. When one of them called the other a whore, well, that was it. The fight became physical at that point as the girls went to the ground clawing at each other. This caused a few boys their age to stop. Many started whistling and catcalling as the catfight started up, but a few Chunins were in the area and pulled the girls apart eventually, although they were still kicking and screaming at the other while being held back. "Well, I was hoping they would be able to fight some more, but overall I think it was good," Naruto said, smiling. Temari smiled and shook her head. "Remind me never to get you pissed off to prank me. In fact, you ever do and I find out about it, you better run." Naruto smiled nervously and scratched the back of his head. "Oh come on, I would never do that to you. What kind of guy do you think I am?" Temari gave him a deadpan expression as she pointed at the two girls, and Naruto had to admit she made a good point. "Okay, I promise that I'll never prank you, at least nothing horrible like that," Naruto said as he wanted to make sure he could keep that promise. "You better keep that promise," she said. "Hey, I always keep my promise, it's part of my ninja code," Naruto said proudly. Temari gave a small smile. "All right then, well, let's eat." "All right, race you to the ramen stand." Naruto jumped out of the tree heading for his usual eating place. "Huh, Naruto, get back here," Temari yelled out as she had to run after the boy. She had never agreed to ramen, and if he got to that stand first she couldn't talk him out of it. They had eaten there last night and she was trying to get him to eat different foods, and for some strange reason she felt that he planned this part out as well. She grinned as she chased after him. Looks like you'll keep me on my toes, Naruto. She was looking forward to the challenge that he looked like he was going to give her in life. She thought Shikamaru was smart, but Naruto took surprising to a whole new level. Naruto was standing in the Hokage's office, not even sure why he was called here. It had been after training when the message got to their team that he was to be called into the Hokage's office as soon as possible. He was kind of disappointed that he had to, since Temari had loosened up a bit since the pranking they had done, and he had been wondering if he could have found something else fun for them to do. She seemed a bit more settled into things as well, although she was still a bit serious, but he hoped that he could help with that. But now he was standing in front of Tsunade's desk as she was going through a pile of papers that Shizune had put there. I can't believe how much paperwork this job has, Tsunade muttered to herself. If she had known how much work this job had, she might not have taken it. Someone arrested for public nudity, graffiti, and above all 2 young kunoichi brawling in the streets, Tsunade told Shizune as she was looking over the incident reports of yesterday. I tell you, I don't remember things like that happening when I was in the village, at least not this much happening. Naruto suddenly froze as he started nervously sweating. Those sounded like the pranks he and Temari had pulled. He swallowed hard as he quickly out of habit scanned for all the possible exits. He knew that he'd have to make a quick getaway if he needed it. Tsunade gave a look at Naruto. Why are you so tense? Aren't things going well with Temari? Naruto suddenly realized that since she was so new at her job and to being back in the village, his reputation for his pranks wasn't known to her, at least yet. He figured as long as he didn't say anything he was in the clear, and then hoped that when she found out about his pranks she never thought back to this day. Oh yeah, things are going okay. We're training really hard and she's showing me how to use wind nature, although it's kind of hard. I have to split a rock with my wind chakra and so far I can just put scratches on it. Well, nature elemental training was always pretty hard normally, Tsunade told him. Then how come Sasuke-tem managed to use 2 different types? Naruto sulked a bit. Well, Tsunade looked to Shizune for help, but she quickly made it look like she was busy with looking over the paperwork in her arms. Traitor, Tsunade thought darkly to herself before looking at awaiting Naruto. Well, kids like Sasuke are rare, and besides his clan was always good with fire elemental jutsu, so since he already knows how to use an element, it's easier once you find out what your secondary element affinity is. Oh, I guess that makes sense, Naruto thought to himself. Tsunade was glad the explanation worked on him. She wasn't sure using the term genius or prodigy would work with someone like Naruto. But now it was time to get to why she called him into her office. So Naruto, do you like Temari? The Hokage asked. Naruto scratched the back of his head. I guess so. I mean, she's teaching me some cool stuff. It's nice not living alone anymore, and thanks for the new home, by the way. She's kind of strict at times, but I think I know how to loosen her up some. Tsunade sighed. That's not what I meant. And do you find her attractive? What? Naruto said, blushing a bit. Naruto, have you even tried to go on a date with her yet? The older blonde asked the younger. Why would I? I mean, we're getting married, so what's the point? Naruto asked honestly. Tsunade felt like slamming her head into the desk at that point. How he could be so short-sighted was beyond her. She had been hoping that he would make an effort to at least court the girl so that something could develop, but Naruto had no plans at all for it. Naruto, just answer the question. Do you think she's attractive? Well, I guess so, Naruto admitted. Look, Naruto, you really don't want to be put into a loveless marriage, do you? Maybe at least make an effort to take her out for a date or something. You never know, something might happen, and it would be better if you could love each other eventually as well. Tsunade said gently to him. I know this is hard, but it will make this easier in the long run at least. Plus it will make you both happier as well. Naruto looked down, thinking about it. He never really did think about his life over the years. He might be able to live with just a marriage without love, but in all honesty it wasn't something to look forward to either. Naruto had to make a lot of changes in his life, some easier than others. He had done his best to give up on his quest to win Sakura over to him, although a part of him still cared for her and he doubted he would totally get over it. But was it really fair to live an entire life without trying to find some kind of love? Plus, what about Temari? Did she deserve the same fate? He thought about his future wife. He would admit that physically she was pretty good. Her long legs were nice and he remembered how she looked coming out of the show with her hair all wet like that. He gulped at the memory. Okay, sure, he found her physically attractive and they were getting along. She had the same work ethic as him too, which was nice. Well, I guess I could try, Naruto wondered out loud. Tsunade smiled. So what kind of plans do you have for her? Well, I'm not sure. I mean, I never had a date. Do either of you have any ideas? Tsunade thought about it. It was better to get advice from them than someone like Jiraiya if he found out that he was looking for advice. Well, treat her nice. I mean, take her out to dinner, or just for a walk. I remember a date with Dan. He showed up with my favorite flowers and we walked to his favorite spot. It was this little bridge overlooking a lake just as the sun was setting. She sighed, remembering those days. It was a beautiful moment and he would tell me how lucky he felt that he found me and said how he admired my abilities, my strength and my beauty. Tsunade sighed as a bit of a sadness hit her. She missed him so much at times. He was the only man that she allowed herself to fall in love with, but the pain of his death was just too much for her. She had stood over him, covered in his blood, trying to save his life, but she couldn't. She couldn't save her little brother who died on his first mission away from the village, and she couldn't save him even when she was there. Shizune looked on in sympathy for Tsunade and the fact that Dan had been her uncle too. Her parents had died when she was young and Dan had taken her in, and when he had died, Tsunade had taken her in after that. After that they had spent the years looking after each other and was the closest thing to family she had in the world. She looked over at Naruto, who was like a lovable kid brother to her lately. Naruto-kun, just remember that girls like to be treated well, complimented, and try to be romantic if you can. Holding hands is a nice way to start, and don't forget to be a gentleman either, like holding a door open for her, pulling out a seat for her, or paying for the meal. Shizune added. And when was the last time you went out on a date? Tsunade asked with a sly smile. Shizune flinched at that. It's not my fault, I just like a certain type. Shizune, if you keep those high standards you'll never find a man, the Hokage joked as Shizune hung her head in slight depression. She hadn't even been with a man in 2 years and she hadn't found the time to date in a long time. Naruto noticed the downward look on a woman that was like an older sister to him and he didn't like it. Well, she might have had the time if you didn't drag her all over the place and running from all the people you owe money to, or dragging you home after you got drunk, Ba-chan. Naruto told the other blonde, who had the good graces to blush at the mention of her less than honorable moments in her life. Shizune gave a small smile to the boy for sticking up for her, and he did have a point too. With all the running around she had barely the time to date. Hell, she had left the village as a teenager and she still remembered that horrible night she decided to lose her virginity to a boy she met on the road in this village they had stopped at one night. That hadn't been a good time for her and she was glad when they left it far behind. Thankfully the very few men she found later on were much better, but she had never found Mr. Right while on the road. Maybe it was something that she could finally get around to doing now that she was now living in one spot all the time. Tsunade coughed, trying to get her dignity back. Well, anyway, try and at least make an effort with making a relationship. Above all, I just want you to be happy the best way I can. Naruto gave her one of his smaller but sincere smiles at that last part. It was good to know that there were people now that actually cared about him. Plus maybe he should at least try things out with Temari. After all, they would be living their entire lives with each other. Later, Naruto went walking around the village trying to figure out things that Temari would like. So far he knew a few things about her and he was trying to figure out something nice that he could get her. Something that reminded her of her home would be perfect, but looking around there wasn't much he could find. Plus he didn't know all that much of Suna to being with other than what she had said, and it was in a dessert. It was on his wondering that he noticed a flower shop and he suddenly was hit by an idea. He grinned widely as he ran to the store, hoping they would be able to help him. Inside the shop there was Ino Yamanaka. Her mother had asked for help with the store today, and since her team wasn't doing anything, she was the one currently working the counter. She didn't mind it. She loved flowers and knew all kinds of information about them, plus she had been helping with the family business for years anyway. Today hadn't been too bad. It had a few slow periods, but overall there had been enough people coming in so she wasn't bored. She hated the slow days as it just seemed to drag on and she would rather train than just sit there doing nothing. Plus after her match with Sakura in the Chunin exams she had taken to thinking that she needed to train more. She had always been the stronger ninja, but Sakura had beaten her to a tie and it was a wake-up call in a way. Although the other good thing that came out of it was that their old friendship had started to be repaired. The door opened up with the familiar door chimes. "Welcome to the Yamanaka flower shop, how can I help you?" she asked just on instinct before looking at the door. "Ino." The blonde looked over and was surprised to see Naruto of all people. "What are you doing here?" Naruto asked. "What do you mean? This is my family's shop, didn't you know that?" Ino asked. Naruto actually didn't know that as he didn't really read the sign, he just saw the flowers and figured to go in. Plus he never knew that Ino's family owned a shop at any rate. Ino rolled her eyes and sighed, "Well, what can I do for you anyway?" "Oh right," Naruto remembered why he came in here for. "Do you have any desert lilies?" Ino blinked, surprised by that. "I'll have to check, that's kind of a rare flower for here as it's not really native to our climate. But give me a moment and I'll see if I can find it." Naruto smiled broadly, hoping that Ino had the flower. While she went into the back, Naruto looked around. There were so many different types of flowers, in fact he hadn't known that there were so many flowers in the world as he looked around. When Ino came back she was carrying a potted plant. "Well, you're in luck, this is the only one we had," Ino said as she put it on the counter. "Why did you want such a rare plant anyway?" "Well, it's for Temari," he told her, getting his frog wallet. "Oh," Ino said, getting interested in this now, "so giving flowers to a girl is a major thing. You like her or something?" Well, it's just that, well, I was told by Tsunade Bachan that maybe I should try dating Temari before the wedding. These are actually her favorite flowers, so I figured it would be a good start." "I'm surprised at you. I never figured you for someone that would be so romantic, so where are you taking her? And please tell me you are not wearing that." She pointed at his clothing. Naruto frowned and looked at his favorite jumpsuit. "What's wrong with this?" "Where do I start?" Ino said dryly. "Look, you want some advice for dating from a girl's point of view." Naruto thought about it. He didn't really know what he was doing, but any helpful advice was good. Shizune and Tsunade had helped him out, but he really wanted to get all the help he could get as he wanted this to go really well. Plus it wasn't like he knew many girls that could help him out as well. "Okay, so what do I need to know?" Naruto asked her eagerly. Ino smirked as for the next few hours Naruto got more than he bargained for. Temari's room. Temari sighed as she placed her battle fan against the wall and sat down. She had done some extra training with her fan to kill the afternoon and now she felt a bit tired. She looked in her mirror and her eyes went to the picture of her and her brothers. She had taken it before she left the village. In it she was giving a small smile. Kankuro was smirking and Gaara, well, he looked as neutral as ever, but you could tell he was more relaxed in the picture. Placed near it was her old forehead protector. Sometimes she would trace the outline of the symbol put on it as a reminder of where she came from. Not that she really needed it, but it helped to ease the small pain of being away from home. She sighed and closed her eyes, and for a moment she thought she could smell the scent of desert lilies. Wait a minute, she thought as her eyes opened up. The smell was way too strong for a memory, and she looked around, and there by the window was a potted plant with, of all things, her favorite flowers. She sat there shocked and dumbfounded for a moment before going to it. She saw there was a card along with it and took it as she read it. "Hey Temari, I hope you like the flowers, I know you like them. If you're not doing anything you want to go out tonight, I want to take you someplace special to me. I'm getting some things ready just in case, so I'll be back before 4. She smiled as it was sighed Naruto at the end. She had to admit this was one of the nicest things someone had done. She sniffed the flowers, enjoying their scent. It was a very thoughtful gift and she had to admit that she liked it. She looked back at the note and then read the last part over again as something hit her. "Is he asking me out?" Temari thought, looking at the wording. It sounded like it, although she supposed it could have been taken the wrong way, but why would he ask her out when they were already going to be married? Unless maybe the boy actually liked her and wanted to ask her out, that made Temari's cheeks blush a bit, mainly due to the fact that no one had even had the courage to ask her out before. Maybe I'm just reading too much into it, Temari thought to herself, but just in case she went to shower and change her clothing. She decided to pick something that was nice and yet not too nice. She wanted to look good because they were going out, but not too much in case it wasn't a date. By the time she was finished, she was in a black version of her dress that she wore when she first came to this village. There were a few differences, but it still held a skirt, and she wore a different pair of the leg stockings, a matching set on her legs that covered her legs. She decided just a slight shade of lipstick would be good enough and nothing else. She checked the clock and found that she was going to run late, and she was anything but someone that was late. Temari debated taking her fan, but she doubted she would need it this time and went downstairs. Naruto had been waiting, hoping that Temari would agree to this. Then he heard someone coming down the stairs and looked up. As she came down the stairs, he had to admit that she really was pretty, and black somehow looked good on her. He was glad that he took some of the advice that Ino told him and changed himself, seeing how Temari looked a bit better than normal. He had gotten rid of his favorite orange jumpsuit and went with some of the few clothing he did have that wasn't that. He found an old pair of jean shorts and he wore his black t-shirt with the orange swirl marking on it. He also put away his headband for it as well. Temari gave a small smile seeing Naruto out of his orange suit. He looked different when not wearing that suit of his, plus his hair looked a bit more wild without the headband there. She made a mental note to try and get him some more clothing one of these days. Thanks for the flowers, Temari told him. He gave a huge grin as he scratched the back of his head. Glad you were happy with them. I know how you missed your home and stuff and remembered how you talked about those flowers. Well, you didn't have to go to all the trouble, but thanks anyway. So what is this thing you had in mind for us? Well, Naruto didn't think this would be so hard. After all, they were going to be married, right? But he could feel his face heating up a bit. I just thought that we should try and, well, date. Temari raised an eyebrow at that. She really hadn't thought about it. Although it wasn't like she had any experience with dating, given her family no one had been brave enough to go and ask her out, so she ended up just giving up on dating and focused on her ninja training. Then the next thing she knew, she was getting married and figured she would never have to go through it all. But now Naruto was asking her out on a date. She felt a bit touched that he would ask that and was glad she dressed up a bit. She might as well try it, as she figured this might be the only date she ever got in life. Alright, so what do you have in mind? She asked, surprising Naruto. Well, come on, I wanted to show you a special spot of mine, he told her as he grabbed a few items that he had fixed up for it. They eventually ended up on the Hokage monument on the top of the fort's head. Temari had to admit that the last thing she thought he would take her was up here, and also that he would be making a picnic of all things. She watched as Naruto set things up. Temari was also wondering if they were even allowed to do this and kept looking to see if any Anbu would be coming any minute to take them away. Hey, it's all ready, Naruto called to her. Well, if we're going to jail for this, then we might as well get something to eat, Temari thought as she sat down next to him. Overall, it was a nice setup and the view was nice up here. She looked at the food and it looked pretty good. In fact, it looked better than what Naruto normally cooked. She was wondering how he was able to cook so well until she noticed something in the basket. So you cooked this yourself? She asked him. Oh yeah, I sure did. Pretty good, huh? Naruto asked her, smiling proudly. Oh yeah, if I didn't know any better I would have sworn this was store-bought stuff, Temari told him, giving him a sly smile. Naruto stiffened a bit and gave a nervous laugh. What? No way, why would you say that? Then Temari got a small smile and pulled out a cup that had a store brand name on it. Naruto gulped nervously as he mentally cursed himself for getting careless. He had thought he had managed to get rid of all of the things that would have shown where he bought the food. Don't worry about it, Temari told him, putting it away. It's the thought that counts anyway. Naruto chuckled nervously. Sorry, I just wanted to make his nice. This is actually my first date with a girl. Well, it's my first time too, so don't sweat it, she said. Naruto looked at her for a moment. How come? I mean, you're smart, strong and, well, pretty. So how come you haven't been on any dates before? She actually blushed a bit when he said she was pretty. No boy had actually done that before that she could think of. She looked down at her food to avoid him seeing it as she thought if she should tell him. In the end she decided she might as well and told her of how the boys were too intimidated by her to ask her to date. Naruto actually looked sad for that. He never figured that someone with a family could still be lonely, and he could tell. From the way she talked about her childhood he could just tell. After all, he had a lonely childhood himself, and maybe that was why he could see that part of her as she was talking. Naruto then brightened up. Well then, I guess I'll just have to make it up to you by giving you the best dates I can do. Then he looked a little uncertain, that is if you still want to. Well, so far it's been nice, Temari said, not sure what she felt about it. Let's just play it by ear then. So this is your special spot, huh? Yeah. Naruto's face took on a more serious look as he looked over the village. I sometimes come up here when I need to get away or to think. Plus looking over the village reminds me of my dream. To be Hokage, Temari stated. Naruto nodded his head. I originally wanted to be Hokage for people to recognize me and respect me, but I learned that to be Hokage means more than that. It means that you put your life on the line to protect everyone in the village, and I know I'm not the smartest or the most well-liked, but this is still my home and I'll do everything to protect this village and my precious people. As he was talking, the sun was setting down over the city, casting a light over the area, and from her viewpoint Naruto almost looked like he was bathed in light for a moment. The way the light hit him as he looked over the village for some reason captivated her as she listened to him. I promised myself that I would become greater than any of the other Hokages, to protect my precious people and to ensure that everyone in the village is protected, and I always keep my promises. It's my nindo, my way of the ninja. He really means it, Temari thought as she just stared at the genin in front of her. The look of intensity in his eyes were like a fire, no more like a maelstrom. That was the perfect thing for this boy. He was full of energy and power, he was unrelenting and never let anything get in his way. She remembered his fights against Gaara and how he had learned the Rasengan as well. There was so much potential in the boy, and for some reasons she felt drawn to it. It was like a burning sun, full of light and power and above all warmth. She felt her cheeks heat up slightly, but then the light started to die down and the magic of the moment went with it. She controlled herself before he noticed, and as they continued on she had to admit that he had got her interest. He was certainly not like other boys, and maybe being married to him might not be so bad after all. It was still too soon to tell, but for the first time she had hoped that this wouldn't be so bad an arrangement. Naruto was glad that the first date had gone well. She had seemed to enjoy herself and it had been nice. He was happy that his first real date had gone so well. He had kept expecting something to go wrong, but besides the fact she found out his little secret with the food, it hadn't been so bad. They had finished up and cleaned things up on his insistence, odd for a boy that once painted up the heads, but he had a newfound respect for the Hokages since the third had died and he wanted to keep it clean. It was late by the time they got back and he was glad to see her actually smiling a bit, so he guessed that she had enjoyed herself. He was about to put the basket away when he had to say goodnight to Temari first. So I hope you enjoyed tonight, Naruto said a little nervously. Temari gave him a small smile. Yeah, it was fun. So, maybe you'd like to do it again sometime after all. To his surprise she bent down and gave him a quick kiss on the cheek. I think I'll enjoy it, good night. Naruto was blushing all over his face. That was the first kiss he got from a girl. He was too stunned to say anything as Temari took pleasure in the fact she seemed to have that effect on him. After all, it was nice for a girl to know she could get that kind of reaction out of a boy she was going to spend her life with. She walked away as she grinned at a thought to put a little extra sway in her hips as she walked up the stairs. Naruto couldn't help but look as she walked up. A small drop of blood was threatening to fall out of his nose. He quickly shook himself. Damn it, stop acting like Ero Sennin. Naruto went to put away the picnic stuff, and also maybe take a small cold shower as well. It had been a few days since their first date, and so far things were going well with the two soon-to-be married couple. Sure, there were the few things like how sometimes they had to race to get to the good bathroom, Temari telling him that he should stop throwing things around at random places and putting them away properly. Naruto also didn't like how she had so many products out on the sink all the time, and also how she didn't let him eat enough ramen. But even with the small issues they managed to get through them. After all, life wasn't perfect. With the team training and going out on a simple dinner date, things between them were slowly growing. At the moment they were in their backyard as she was helping him with wind training. Both were sitting down as he had a rock between his hands, trying as hard as he could to cut it in two. It just wasn't that easy. The rock was pretty solid and he was finding it difficult to keep his wind element stable. "Ah, damn it," Naruto yelled out as he lost his concentration again. Temari sighed. She wished that Naruto would learn some patience. The boy kept expecting to get everything done right on the first try. "Naruto, how many times have I told you to relax? You can't just keep going at it without thinking or concentrating." "I'm trying," Naruto snapped out, glaring at the rock in his hands. "Don't snap at me, mister, just because you're frustrated," Temari said, slightly angry. Naruto sighed and nodded. "Sorry, I didn't mean it, but it's just so hard. I mean, how come I did shadow clones in one night and the Rasengan in a month but not get anywhere with this?" "Well, first off," Temari started to explain. "From what Kakashi said, you're unique when it comes to shadow clones. Even I haven't even tried to learn that one yet. Now as for Rasengan, well, maybe you're more talented with shape manipulation, plus this isn't supposed to be easy anyway." Temari got up and got behind him and laid her hands on his shoulders. She felt him tense up in surprise at the contact. "Just relax, okay? You can't do this if you're all tense." Naruto swallowed as he tried to calm his mind, but it was kind of hard to do at the moment. He tried not to think of her hands and how light their touch was against him, or that fact he could smell the scent of her hair as she was this close to him. A girl had never been this close to him and he was a little nervous about it, but he tried to push that aside and think of wind chakra. She had explained how it was supposed to feel and the shape he was supposed to have in his mind about it. As his mind was wondering, he heard a small crack and looked startled at his hands. He saw a small crack had formed in the rock and he got a huge smile on his face. "Hey, look, I did it," Naruto said, showing her the rock. "You cracked it. It's a step in the right direction, but don't get cocky yet," she told him with a smirk. She straightened up, stretching out her back. "I think I'll go in and relax in some nice hot water." "Okay, I'll want to keep at this for a bit longer," Naruto smiled as he went back to his work. Temari wasn't surprised. Naruto trained to the point that went beyond what a normal person would do. In fact, she was actually starting to push herself as well. His attitude seemed to be a bit infectious with her, plus she didn't want to be left behind either. As she went into the house, Naruto looked at his rock and kept on trying to picture how wind-natured chakra was supposed to be and feel it out. He wanted to cut the rock in half soon so he could start learning all kinds of kick-ass wind elemental jutsus. He lost track of how long he was into his training, but so far he couldn't get the hang of it. He tried to relax, but each time he failed at getting the results, the more frustrated he got. After a while he took a break as he glared at the rock. It was like it was mocking him, but he would show it who was boss. "So how have you been, kid?" Naruto jumped and turned around to see Jiraiya standing behind him. Naruto hadn't seen the old pervert in a while and smiled a bit seeing him. "Things are going good, Ero Sennin," Naruto said. The Toad Sage scowled a bit. "Damn it, how many times do I have to tell you to stop calling me that?" Naruto just ignored it and held up his rock. "Look, I managed to get it to crack. A bit more training and I'll be able to learn all kinds of kick-ass moves." Jiraiya stood closer as he looked at the rock. It wasn't much for progress, but for a boy his age to be learning to do elemental training after shape training was impressive. But he also didn't want to give the kid a swelled head. The boy already had problems with that and he needed to learn to keep that in check. "Not bad, but you still got a lot of work ahead of you." He could see Naruto looked a bit disappointed. "So then how are things going with that Suna girl? Anything interesting?" Naruto was surprised by the sudden change in topic as he scratched the back of his head. "Well, Tsunade Bachan wants me to take her on dates to get to know her more." Jiraiya chuckled a bit. He never knew his old teammate liked to play matchmaker. "So how have you been doing on that front?" Naruto blushed a bit as he went through the dates they had so far. He talked about the first one on top of the Hokage monument. Naruto thought back to that date and he had to admit that she was pretty that day, and he also remembered how she walked up those steps, causing him to blush at the memory. When he was talking about the others, he suddenly heard perverted giggling and scratching noises. He turned to see Jiraiya was grinning as he was scribbling down notes. "What the hell?" Naruto yelled at him. "Hey, don't stop now," Jiraiya said as he kept on making notes. "This is good stuff, kid. I didn't know you had it in you. You keep this up and I think I'll make my next book on this." "Ah, I can see it now. Ika Ika Princess, the story of a boy trying to win the heart of an exotic princess from another land to prevent a war. It will have action, adventure, romance, and it could be my next big seller." "You're not making one of your perverted books about me and Temari," Naruto yelled as he tried to grab the notes. "Come on, kid, I'll cut you in for a percentage then," he told the boy as he tried to keep his notes. "Give me that," Naruto yelled out. Inside, Temari was enjoying the hot water. The way it soothed her made her wish that Suna had enough water to spare for something like this. Although this was their small personal onsen, she didn't dare go in naked. She had bought a small bathing suit to use when she was in here. Besides, what if company came over, or what if Naruto walked in on her? That incident with the shower had been embarrassing enough. She blushed remembering that moment. Sure, they were going to be married, but that didn't mean she was ready to have any man see her naked just yet. She took the time to relax and think on things. So far it wasn't so bad how things were going in her life. It was still strange, and she knew she might never totally get used to living in this village, but it was getting better. Another thing she was thinking about was Naruto. The boy kept on surprising her. He wasn't all that bright at times, and yet he could do something insightful as well. In some areas he was weak, but in others he was so far ahead of everyone it just made no sense to her logical mind. Maybe that was why she was starting to find him so interesting. He was like a living puzzle, and everything she felt she was getting close to solving it. Naruto would do something that would change all of that. Another thing was that he treated her pretty well. She had been expecting, when she heard of this whole arrangement, to act the perfect housewife. A fate she would have hated and most likely had rather killed herself within the year, but he never once told her to do anything. He always asked her first. Plus, apparently he had a thing about being put into place by strong female types. With how Sakura popped him on the head and how Tsunade threw something at his head for the few times she had seen when he just barged into her office and called her Bachan, Temari was starting to think the boy was a masochist. On the bright side, with all of that, she could control him when he got out of line. Although at times he could be a very stubborn person as well. Her mind went to their dates that they had, and she was surprised at how much she enjoyed her time with the boy. Temari had never had the chance for a dating life, but so far Naruto was making up for it. He tried so hard that it was very sweet as well. "Damn it, Ero Sennin." Naruto's loud voice broke her out of her calming thoughts as she heard an argument going on outside. Her left eye twitched a bit at being disturbed. She gave a small growl of annoyance and picked up a towel and quickly dried herself off as she put it around her waist to go see what the problem was. She made it to the back door and moved it open, and there was Naruto wrestling with some old man over some kind of papers. "What the hell is going on here?" she demanded angrily. Naruto jumped in surprised, and Jiraiya took the opportunity to get back his previous notes. Naruto scowled at him as he started to answer Temari. Ero Sennin here was being a pervert again. He wanted to. He trailed off as he went to look at her. There was Temari, slightly wet, her hair still damp and hung down close to her face. She only had on a towel and a swimming top on that he could see. He blushed deeply as he had never seen her with so much skin showing. Jiraiya, on the other hand, noticed the boy's look and had to admit the girl was a lovely young thing. Pity she was too young for him. He slapped the boy on the back hard enough to cause the boy to fall forward. "Nice catch, Gaki. You got a real winner with that one." "What the hell is that supposed to mean, and who the hell are you?" Temari demanded. "Allow me to introduce myself." Jiraiya got into his usual stance as he became the weird dance of his. "I am the sage of Mount Myobokuzen, the Toad Hermit, the one that the ladies adore and swoon over his charm and power. I am one of the legendary three. I am Jiraiya the Sannin." Temari blinked a couple of times, then 4 times, and then 5 more times before she said anything. "You're supposed to be the Jiraiya," she said deadpanned. She just couldn't understand why the Leaf Village seemed to have the most bizarre collection of ninja in the entire world. "That I am, my dear, and you must be the Temari girl that my new apprentice is going to marry." Jiraiya was already taking notes in his head to make the princess in his story a blonde with a fiery temper. Although many might confuse the character with another character of his, Ayane, which was based on Tsunade, well, nothing a little editing of the character couldn't fix. "I am," Temari told him. "So what's all this about?" At that, Naruto snapped out of his daze seeing Temari in that state of dress and pointed accusingly at Jiraiya. "He was going to make one of his perverted books about us and I was trying to stop him." "His what?" Temari glared at the man. "Ero Sennin is the guy that writes those books that you see Kakashi-sensei reading," Naruto told her, crossing his arms over his chest. Temari got an angry tick on her eye as she glared at the old man. Jiraiya, after a lifetime of knowing Tsunade, had developed an instinct about angry women. He could already see that this girl shared a few of his teammates' attributes, although it was too bad that Tsunade's most visual appealing attributes weren't there for Naruto to enjoy, but the anger this woman had was just like Tsunade. Temari was coming to terms with marrying Naruto, leaving her village and living here, but having one of those perverted books written about her was crossing a line. There was no way she could hold her head up high if people found out about that, and her reputation could be ruined. Now she really wished she had her battle fan handy, as she had an urge to slam it into his skull. "Got it," Naruto shouted as he managed to snag the notes from Jiraiya's hand while he was busy with Temari. "Damn it, that could be my best work yet, you brat," Jiraiya yelled out as he started to chase Naruto around the yard. "I don't think so," Naruto yelled out as he made his favorite hand seal, and suddenly a large amount of white smoke showed up. When it was gone, there were at least over a dozen Narutos as they ran off in different directions. Jiraiya cursed as he picked one out and started to chase it. They all left the backyard and Temari smirked as she had to admit, Naruto came up with a good plan, and was further impressed when a rock suddenly turned back into Naruto. He was grinning happily as he used his shadow clones to get rid of Jiraiya while he had turned into a rock. Temari came up behind him. "Niece, that should keep him busy for a while. How long do your clones last anyway?" Naruto wondered about it as he shrugged. "I have no idea, usually I get rid of them or they hit something." Then he turned around and blushed as he was face to face with Temari, and given their difference in height he had a good view of her chest. His eyes were just drawn to the cleavage in front of him and he couldn't look away. Temari suddenly noticed what he was looking at and quickly crossed her arms. "Hey, eyes up," she yelled, and Naruto took a step back. Sorry, I didn't meant to," Naruto said as both teens were blushing hugely. "Hentai," Temari shouted as she started to chase Naruto around as he started to run from her. What they didn't know was that in one of the trees Jiraiya was watching them. He giggled as he was writing down on a spare notepad. If Naruto could think he could get one on him after years of being a pervert, the boy was in for a surprise. He let the boy think that he had grabbed the real notes and chased a clone just long enough to get out of sight. He couldn't help but chuckle as he watched the two, and his mind was reminded of a similar moment between Naruto's parents. Minato had accidentally crashed into Kushina and a hand had landed on a breast. That girl had chased the poor boy all over the village before she caught him. He giggled as he started to write down more scenes. He couldn't wait to get this book out. Elsewhere, Kakashi Hatake was having a hard time, although you would never know it from just looking at him. He was sitting in his small apartment trying to read his book, but he just kept on reading the same page over and over again. He eventually put it away as he sat up and sighed. He was both happy and not so happy with how things were turning out for his team. Temari was helping both Naruto and Sakura in ways he never expected. She was helping both with their taijutsu, and he was helping out here and there as well with hints and improvements. Temari's training in Wind Elemental was going to help Naruto out a lot as well when he got the hang of it. Kakashi also managed to get a couple of Water Elemental jutsus for Sakura to start training in, as he could help her out with that. The only major problem was Sasuke. The boy was being more withdrawn and his quest for power had only gotten worse since that curse mark. In fact, the boy's behavior had changed a lot since the Forest of Death, and not in the good way. The boy had been coming along, and if things had kept as they were he might have started to open up and changed for the best. But Orochimaru had ruined that, and now the man was after the boy. Sasuke already was one of the strongest genin, knew 2 different elemental attacks, which was something someone didn't learn until they made Jonin, but it still wasn't enough, it would seem. He wanted to learn shape manipulation, but he wanted Sasuke to learn other things before that. Like what it meant to be part of a team and that he didn't have to go through it all alone. Plus he had already spent a month training Sasuke and he needed to round out the team more before he could even consider that, but Sasuke wasn't the patient type. Kakashi looked at the window and he saw the plant that Naruto had given him a while back. He smiled at how the boy had grown it himself and given it to him. Kakashi had gotten a book on plants to make sure he took care of it as well, as a present from students should be honored. He was glad that Temari was helping him out as the boy needed the extra help as his schooling was lacking in the academy. He was secretly glad when Naruto got Iruka as a teacher. Sakura, he definitely needed to get that girl someone that could be a role model for her. She could become great if she was become more serious as a ninja and she could go far. Temari was already an impressive ninja, but her weakness was her weakness in closer quarters so far. But then his mind ran back to Sasuke and how that seal was on him. That counter seal that he had put on Sasuke would only work with the power of that person's will, but there were two facts that were also in play. The first being that he wasn't a seal master like the fourth of Jiraiya were. Sure, he knew more than most, but he wasn't an expert. The other thing was that the cursed seal was Orochimaru's personal design and no one other than him knew all that much about it. Maybe if he knew something more about it, then he could help out more and make sure that Sasuke's mark was totally repressed, but the only person that knew anything was a missing nin that would not help out. Then he suddenly remembered that there was another person he could ask, that is if she wanted to. Kakashi got his vest and put it on, more out of habit than anything else, and jumped out his window and started his search. Hopefully she was still in the village and not on some mission. He knew a bit about the ninja in question but not much. He respected her skills and he had worked with her a few times in the past. Sure, she was a bit eccentric, but she wasn't all that bad. She just liked to have some fun. Unfortunately, besides a few things and that she was close friends with Kurenai, there wasn't much he knew of the younger woman. It wasn't until an hour later, when he felt like he would have to seek out Kurenai for information, that he found his target. There she was, coming out of a dango shop, eating the last of said treat. Anko had been having a nice relaxing break so far. Nothing major was going on with all the reconstruction going on. Thankfully her apartment had survived being crushed by a giant snake, the buildings next to hers not so much, so she needed to get out when the construction started. There was just no way for her to sleep in or relax with all that racket going on, but at least she wasn't homeless like some of the more unfortunate ones. She had spent the day shopping for some new supplies, some food, and looking for something interesting to wear as well. Hopefully there might be a mission soon, as she was starting to get a little bored though, something to at least keep things interesting. "Hello there, Anko." She stopped at the smooth and relaxed voice behind her as she turned to see one, Kakashi Hatake, behind her. She grinned seeing the man. He defiantly was looking to make things interesting, as Kakashi was never boring. Plus he had that little firecracker on his team as well. "So what is it?" Anko asked him to the point. Kakashi gave an amused smile. "Glad to see you too, but honestly I need your help with something that only you can do." Now Anko was smiling a bit more. "What's the name, and do you want that person still breathing?" "Nothing like that," Kakashi told her, and her shoulders slumped in disappointment. "I need your help for a student of mine." Anko blinked and thought about it for a second. "Oh, which one?" "Sasuke," Kakashi said in a more serious tone. Now Anko's mood took a bit of a darker turn. She knew all about what had happened in the Forest of Death between her old teacher and Sasuke, and she knew his plans for the Uchiha. She suddenly felt a brief twitch where her own curse mark was on her neck. She shifted a little as her shoulder rolled, but Kakashi caught it. He nodded as he saw her eyes. "Yeah, I need your help with his curse seal. I don't know enough about it and I'm afraid that the counter seal I put on isn't working that well." "Counter seal? There's a counter and no one told me," Anko said a little more dangerously. Kakashi held up his hands in defense. "I had to rush to put it on and I wasn't sure how well it would work. Plus he seemed to be having a hard time with it and I never seen you have any issues with yours, so I assumed it was fine. I'm also surprised that the third never mentioned it, as I did report it to him." Anko let a deep sigh go as she let her anger go as well. She knew better than that, and if there was a problem with the boys then it might not work well with her anyway. But still it stung a bit that the old man never told her that Kakashi was experimenting with a counter. Sure, her own seal didn't always activate, but she had to constantly be on guard if it ever did. And the few times it did react, it was painful and left her vulnerable like in the forest of death. "Anko?" Kakashi asked, seeing how she was. "I'm fine," Anko said, looking up at him. "If I help you with this, you think you can help me?" Kakashi rubbed his chin. "It might not be too much of a problem, although I might have to get someone else to put it on you, as I'm not sure you'll let me try anything what I used on Sasuke." "Why is that?" Anko demanded, her hands on her hips. The seal required Sasuke to have it painted on his upper body, his bare upper body. He clarified. Anko's face lit up in realization. "Oh, yeah, thanks for the heads up, but trust me, I got nothing to be ashamed of, but thanks for the heads up." "Well, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, so then what do we do first?" Kakashi was glad for her help, and who knew, maybe by studying her seal he could help her out as well.